Long before the Inca established their vast empire, the South American region of Andean mountains was home to a succession of complex societies that developed remarkable advancements in agriculture, metallurgy, and social organization. These foundational cultures provided the technological, administrative, and ideological precedents which the Inca would later build upon. But how could an empire of millions, with vast networks of roads and storehouses, manage its entire economy and administration without a single written word? Why Inca succession was driven by a unique system of split inheritance, where a new Sapa Inca had to conquer his own wealth, as he did not inherit the property of his predecessor. Where did they learn to perform a successful trepanation on human skulls with a high survival rate? One of the earliest influential cultures was the Chavin, in the northern highlands of Peru from approximately 900 to 200 BCE. The Chavin are primarily known for their ceremonial center, Chavin de Huanta, a monumental stone complex featuring intricate carvings and subterranean galleries. This site served as a major pilgrimage destination, disseminating a pan-Andean religious iconography characterized by anthropomorphic jaguars, serpents, and birds of prey. The Chavin's influence extended through extensive trade networks, evidenced by the spread of their distinctive pottery and textile designs, suggesting a widespread religious and cultural horizon rather than a unified political state. Their sophisticated understanding of hydraulic engineering is also notable, as demonstrated by the intricate drainage systems at their ceremonial sites. Following the decline of Chavin influence, regional cultures diversified, leading to the emergence of highly specialized societies. Among these, the Nazca, around 100 BCE to 800 CE, on the southern coast, are renowned for their elaborate polychrome pottery and the enigmatic Nazca lines, massive geoglyphs etched into the desert floor, believed to have astronomical or ritualistic significance. Contemporaneously, the Moche, around 100 to 800 CE, on the northern coast, developed a powerful state, characterized by monumental adobe pyramids, advanced irrigation systems, and a distinctive naturalistic ceramic art that vividly depicts their daily life, rituals, and warfare. The Moche were skilled metallurgists, producing intricate gold, silver, and copper artifacts, including elaborate funerary masks and ceremonial objects. Their political structure involved a series of independent valley polities, each ruled by a powerful elite. Just a quick announcement, if you enjoy this video so far, please subscribe to our channel, as it motivates us to bring you a new story every evening. This is the only kind request tonight, and we won't bother you with it anymore until the very end of today's story. Let's get back to the video. The Middle Horizon, around 600 to 1000 CE, witnessed the rise of two significant Pan-Andean empires, the Wari and Tiwanaku. The Wari Empire, originating in the central highlands of Peru, established a centralized administrative system constructing extensive road networks and provincial centers like Piquilacta. Their influence spread through military conquest and the imposition of a standardized iconography on textiles and ceramics. Wari urban planning, characterized by grid-patterned cities and large public buildings, provided a template for later imperial organization. Simultaneously, the Tiwanaku civilization, centered near Lake Titicaca in modern-day Bolivia, developed a powerful state based on sophisticated agricultural techniques, including raised field systems, suca colas, that maximized food production in high-altitude environments. Tiwanaku's monumental architecture, particularly the Gate of the Sun, showcases their advanced stone masonry and astronomical knowledge. Their religious and artistic motifs, like the staff god, diffused widely across the southern Andes, influencing subsequent cultures. These pre-Inca civilizations, through their innovations in agriculture, monumental architecture, social stratification, and religious systems, provided the essential cultural and technological foundations that the Inca would inherit, adapt, and ultimately synthesize into their own unique imperial structure. The Inca did not emerge from a void, but were the culmination of millennia of Andean cultural development. The most prominent and widely disseminated origin myth centers on the emergence of Manco Capac and Mama Oclo, often depicted as the first Sapa Inca and Coya, queen, from Lake Titicaca. This sacred lake, located in the high Andes, was considered a primordial source of life and a significant religious site for various Andean cultures long before the Inca. According to this myth, Inti, the sun god, recognizing the chaotic state of humanity, sent his children, Manco Capac and Mama Oclo, to bring order and civilization to the world. They were given a golden staff, with instructions to settle wherever the staff sank effortlessly into the earth, indicating fertile ground. Their journey from Lake Titicaca led them northward through the highlands, a trek that symbolically connected the Inca's divine origins to the vast Andean landscape they would eventually dominate. The sinking of the golden staff occurred in the Cusco Valley, signifying the divinely ordained location for their capital. This act established Cusco as the Cosco, or navel, of the world, the sacred center from which the Inca Empire, Tahuantinsuyu, would expand. The myth further details Manco Capac's role in teaching the men the arts of agriculture, building, and warfare, while Mama Oclo instructed the women in weaving, cooking, and domestic skills. This division of labor within the myth emphasized the complementary roles of men and women in Inca society and the importance of both agricultural productivity and domestic harmony for a thriving civilization. The narrative thus provided a divine blueprint for Inca social organization and economic practices. Beyond the Lake Titicaca origin, other Inca myths describe different points of emergence, such as from a cave at Pachacuti, south of Cusco. This alternative narrative often features 4 pairs of siblings, known as the Ayar brothers and sisters, who emerged from 3 caves. Ayar Manco, who would become Manco Capac, was the most significant of these figures. While seemingly contradictory, these multiple origin myths were not necessarily seen as mutually exclusive by the Inca. Instead, they likely served to reinforce the divine and multifaceted nature of Inca ancestry, allowing different regional groups within the empire to connect with aspects of the imperial narrative. The consistent theme across these myths was the direct descent of the Inca ruling class from the sun god, Inti. This divine lineage was paramount to the Sapa Inca's authority, positioning him as a living deity and the intermediary between the human and divine realms. The myths provided a theological framework for the Incas' expansionist policies, presenting their conquests as a divine mission to civilize and bring order to other peoples under the benevolent guidance of the sun. They also served as a powerful tool for social cohesion, uniting diverse ethnic groups under a shared imperial ideology rooted in a sacred past. This emphasis on divine origin ensured the legitimacy of the Inca state and its hierarchical structure, with the Sapa Inca at its undisputed apex. Before it became the glittering capital of the vast Inca Empire, Cusco was a modest settlement in a fertile Andean valley, a region that held significant strategic and agricultural importance long before the rise of Tahuantinsuyu. Archaeological investigations in the Cusco Valley have revealed evidence of human occupation dating back thousands of years, indicating a continuous cultural development that preceded the Inca. Early inhabitants were likely small, decentralized agricultural communities, cultivating crops such as potatoes, quinoa, and maize in the valley's rich alluvial soils and on the lower slopes of the surrounding mountains. The transition from these small, autonomous agricultural settlements to more complex political units, or chiefdoms, in the Cusco Valley was a gradual process. This period, often referred to as the Early Intermediate Period, around 200 BCE to 600 CE, and the Middle Horizon, around 600 to 1000 CE, saw the development of more organized social structures and the emergence of local leaders who began to consolidate power. While direct evidence of proto-Inca chiefdoms from this very early stage is limited, archaeological findings suggest increasing social stratification and communal labor projects, such as early terracing and irrigation systems, which required coordinated effort beyond individual family units. The strategic importance of the Cusco Valley to these emerging polities cannot be overstated. Its elevation, approximately 300-400 meters, 11-200 feet, above sea level, provided a temperate climate suitable for diverse agricultural production. The valley's natural topography, characterized by fertile plains surrounded by defensible hills and mountains, offered both agricultural abundance and natural protection. Rivers flowing through the valley provided essential water resources for both human consumption and irrigation. This combination of arable land, water access, and natural defenses made the valley an attractive location for sustained settlement and the growth of larger populations. During the late intermediate period, around 1000 to 1400 CE, immediately preceding Inca imperial expansion, the Cusco Valley was home to several competing chiefdoms, often referred to as islas or curacazgos. These groups engaged in localized conflicts over land and resources, and their political landscape was characterized by shifting alliances and rivalries. Archaeological excavations have identified various sites from this period, demonstrating distinct pottery styles and architectural traditions among these groups. The Inca, initially one among these numerous islas, were strategically positioned within this competitive environment. Their early development involved a process of consolidating control over neighboring groups within the valley, often through a combination of diplomacy, intermarriage, and localized military engagements. This period of internal valley consolidation was crucial for the Inca. It allowed them to develop their administrative capabilities, military organization, and agricultural infrastructure on a smaller scale before embarking on broader imperial expansion. The experience gained in managing the diverse communities within the Cusco Valley, resolving disputes, and organizing labor for public works laid the essential groundwork for the sophisticated imperial administration that would later govern Tahuantinsuyu. The early Inca rulers, while not yet emperors of a vast realm, were instrumental in transforming Cusco from a collection of disparate settlements into a unified regional power, setting the stage for the dramatic imperial growth that would follow. Archaeological discoveries have revealed the Quilchi culture, a fascinating society that inhabited the Cusco region just before the Inca, providing crucial insights into the immediate cultural context from which the Inca would emerge. Flourishing approximately from 900 to 1400 CE, the Quilchi represent the late intermediate period in the Cusco Valley, directly preceding the rapid expansion of the Inca Empire. Their material culture and settlement patterns demonstrate a significant regional development that directly influenced early Inca practices. Quilchi pottery is distinctive, characterized primarily by its geometric designs, often painted in black or red on a cream or light brown slip. Common motifs include triangles, diamonds, and stepped patterns. While less elaborate than later Inca imperial pottery, Quilca ceramics show a clear evolution in form and decoration, with some vessel shapes, such as the arabaloid jar, foreshadowing classic Inca styles. The presence of Quilca pottery in various archaeological contexts, including domestic and ceremonial sites, indicates its widespread use across the Cusco region. This ceramic tradition provides a tangible link between the pre-imperial period and the nascent Inca state. In terms of architectural styles and settlement organization, Quilchi sites often feature circular or oval structures, sometimes clustered together in small hamlets or larger villages. These constructions typically utilized rough-cut field stones set in mud mortar. While lacking the monumental precision of later Inca masonry, Quilca building techniques laid a foundation for stone construction in the region. Evidence of defensive structures, such as walls and ditches around some Quilchi sites, suggests a period of localized conflict and competition among various groups within the valley. This indicates a political landscape characterized by independent polities, rather than a unified regional power. Quilca social organization, inferred from archaeological evidence, appears to have been based on chiefdoms or ailas, similar to other Andean societies of the late intermediate period. There is evidence of increasing social stratification, with differences in grave goods suggesting varying levels of wealth and status among individuals. Communal labor projects, such as agricultural terracing and small-scale irrigation systems, are also attributed to the Quilchi, indicating a degree of organized leadership capable of mobilizing community resources for public works. These organizational principles, particularly the Ailu structure and communal labor, were fundamental concepts that the Inca would later adapt and integrate into their imperial administration. The relationship between the Quilchi and the early Inca is one of significant cultural continuity. Archaeological excavations at sites beneath later Inca constructions in Cusco, including the Coricancha and Sacsayhuaman, have consistently yielded Quilchi remains. This stratigraphic evidence demonstrates that the Inca built directly upon existing Quilca settlements, often incorporating or modifying Quilca structures. This suggests that the early Inca were not a completely distinct or invading group, but rather one of the Quilca period chiefdoms that gradually gained ascendancy over its neighbors. The Inca adopted and refined many aspects of Quilchi technology and social organization, including their agricultural practices, ceramic forms, and perhaps even early forms of their administrative structures. The emergence of the Inca, therefore, represents a culmination of regional developments, with the Quilca culture serving as a direct and essential precursor to the imperial power that would soon dominate the Andes. The initial centuries of Inca history are largely derived from oral traditions recorded by Spanish chroniclers, often blending historical events with legendary narratives. While precise archaeological corroboration for every early Sapa Inca remains challenging, these accounts collectively detail the gradual consolidation of Inca power within the Cusco Valley, laying the groundwork for later imperial expansion. The period from Manco Capac to Inca Roca encompasses the formative stages of the Inca state, characterized by localized conflicts and the establishment of foundational social and political structures. Manco Capac, considered the mythical founder and first Sapa Inca, is credited with leading the Inca to the Cusco Valley and establishing their initial settlement. His reign, while largely legendary, symbolizes the transition from a migratory group to a settled community. Accounts attribute to him the establishment of basic social norms and the division of the Inca into Upper, Hanan, and Lower, Hurin, Cusco moieties, a dualistic organizational principle that would persist throughout Inca history. This early period involved the construction of rudimentary dwellings and the initial cultivation of the valley's fertile lands. Following Manco Capac, the succession of early Sapa Incas, including Sinchi Roca, Loque Yupanqui, Maita Capac, Capac Yupanqui, Inca Roca, and Yahua Huacac, focused primarily on securing and expanding Inca influence within the immediate Cusco Valley. These rulers engaged in a series of localized skirmishes and alliances with neighboring islas and chiefdoms. The term Sinchi, meaning leader or warrior, often associated with early rulers, suggests a period where military prowess was paramount for regional dominance. Sinchi Roca, the second Sapa Inca, is traditionally credited with initiating the practice of ear piercing for Inca nobility, a ritual that marked their status and connection to the sun. This act, while seemingly minor, contributed to the development of a distinct Inca identity and hierarchy. Loque Yupanqui, his successor, is often associated with diplomatic efforts, forging alliances through marriage and negotiation rather than outright conquest, thereby gradually extending Inca influence without extensive military campaigns. Maita Capac, the fourth Sapa Inca, is depicted as a more assertive military leader, engaging in early campaigns to expand Inca territory beyond the immediate vicinity of Cusco. Accounts suggest he initiated the construction of early public works, demonstrating an increasing capacity for organized labor. Capac Yupanqui, the fifth ruler, continued this trend of cautious expansion, consolidating control over several small communities in the Cusco Valley and improving agricultural infrastructure. Inca Roca, the sixth Sapa Inca, is a particularly significant figure in this early period. He is credited with shifting the royal residence to Hanan Cusco, symbolizing a change in political power dynamics. More importantly, Inca Roca is associated with the construction of the Yachewasi, or House of Knowledge, an institution for the education of Inca nobility. This development indicates a growing emphasis on formal instruction and the systematic transmission of knowledge, crucial for the administration of an expanding state. He also initiated significant hydraulic engineering projects, including the channeling of the Huatenay River, which improved agricultural productivity and urban sanitation in Cusco. These actions demonstrate a move towards more sophisticated state organization and resource management. Yahuahuacac, the seventh Sapa Inca, faced internal challenges and external threats, marking a period of vulnerability for the nascent Inca state. His reign is often characterized by setbacks and a temporary contraction of Inca influence. These early rulers, through a combination of military action, diplomacy, and the gradual development of administrative and religious institutions, transformed the Inca from a regional chiefdom into a more organized political entity, setting the stage for the dramatic imperial expansion under Pachacuti. The true birth of the Inca Empire, known as Tawantinsuyu, is inextricably linked to the figure of Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui, the ninth Sapa Inca. His reign, beginning around 1438 CE, marked a pivotal transition from a regional kingdom in the Cusco Valley to a formidable imperial power, fundamentally reshaping Andean political and social structures. Pachacuti's rise to power was dramatic, occurring amidst a severe threat to the Inca state. During the invasion of the aggressive Chanca Confederation, the reigning Sapa Inca, Viracocha Inca, and his designated heir, Urco, reportedly fled Cusco. It was the young prince Cusi Yupanqui, later known as Pachacuti, who rallied the Inca forces and successfully defended the capital against the Chanca assault. This decisive victory not only saved the Inca kingdom but also established Cusi Yupanqui's legitimacy and strategic genius, leading to his usurpation of the throne from his father and brother. Upon his ascension, Pachacuti initiated profound reforms that transformed the Inca state. Recognizing the limitations of the previous tribal organization, he embarked on a systematic restructuring of the Inca military. This involved the professionalization of the army, the implementation of rigorous training programs, and the standardization of weaponry and tactics. He organized conquered populations into specialized military units, integrating them into the Inca fighting force and expanding its overall size and capabilities. These military innovations were crucial for the subsequent rapid expansion of Inca territory. Beyond military reforms, Pachacuti implemented a comprehensive administrative reorganization of the nascent empire. He is credited with establishing the Tawantinsuyu system, dividing the empire into 4 suyus or quarters, each governed by an Apu governor, who reported directly to the Sapa Inca. This centralized administrative structure allowed for efficient control over vast territories and diverse populations. He also standardized the mita system, a rotational labor draft, to mobilize vast resources for state projects, including monumental construction, agricultural terracing, and the expansion of the road network. This ensured a steady supply of labor for imperial endeavors without relying solely on tribute in goods. Pachacuti's reign saw the systematic expansion of Inca dominion through a combination of military conquest and strategic diplomacy. His campaigns extended Inca control across the southern highlands, incorporating groups such as the Colla and Lupica near Lake Titicaca, and pushing northward into the central highlands. His strategy often involved offering conquered groups the opportunity to integrate peacefully into the empire, retaining their local leaders, curacas, in exchange for loyalty and participation in the mita system. Resistance, however, was met with decisive military force and, in some cases, the resettlement of rebellious populations, mitmacs, to prevent future insurrections. A significant aspect of Pachacuti's transformation was his emphasis on imperial ideology and the cult of the sun god, Inti. He rebuilt Cusco, transforming it into a magnificent imperial capital designed in the shape of a puma, with the Coricancha, Temple of the Sun, at its heart. This architectural endeavor was not merely aesthetic, but served to physically manifest Inca power and their divine connection to Inti. The construction of massive fortresses like Sacsayhuaman also occurred during his reign, demonstrating the Incas' unparalleled engineering capabilities and their commitment to securing their burgeoning empire. Pachacuti's reforms laid the indispensable groundwork for the Inca Empire's golden age, providing the institutional and ideological framework that enabled its unprecedented growth and consolidation. The Chanca War stands as a pivotal event in Inca history, widely regarded as the crucible in which the regional kingdom of Cusco was forged into the formidable Inca Empire. This conflict, occurring in the early 15th century, pitted the nascent Inca state against the aggressive Chanca Confederation, a powerful ethnic group originating from the modern-day Ayacucho region. The Chanca, known for their martial prowess and expansionist tendencies, posed an existential threat to the Inca, who at this point were primarily confined to the Cusco Valley. Historical accounts, primarily from Inca oral traditions recorded by Spanish chroniclers like Pedro Chiesa de León and Garcilaso de la Vega, detail the Chanca advance towards Cusco. Under the leadership of their formidable commanders, the Uscavilca brothers, the Chanca launched a direct assault on the Inca capital. The severity of this threat is underscored by the reported actions of the reigning Sapa Inca, Viracocha Inca, and his designated heir, Urco. Faced with the overwhelming Chanca forces, both Viracocha Inca and Urco are said to have abandoned Cusco, retreating to the safety of nearby fortifications, a move that left the capital vulnerable and demoralized its inhabitants. In this moment of crisis, a young prince named Cusi Yupanqui, who was not the designated heir, emerged as the decisive leader. Disregarding his father's and brother's retreat, Cusi Yupanqui remained in Cusco and rallied the remaining Inca forces along with the city's populace. He organized the defense of the capital, demonstrating exceptional strategic acumen and personal courage. The battle for Cusco was fierce, fought within the city's immediate environs. Inca traditions emphasize a miraculous intervention, where stones on the battlefield transformed into warriors known as pururaucas, aiding the Inca cause. While this element is mythological, it underscores the perceived divine favor and the desperate nature of the Inca defense. The Inca, under Cusi Yupanqui's command, achieved a decisive victory over the Chanca. This triumph was not merely a military success but a profound legitimizing event for Cusi Yupanqui. His leadership in defending Cusco contrasted sharply with the perceived cowardice of his father and brother. This established his authority and divine right to rule, leading directly to his usurpation of the Sapa Inca title. Upon his ascension, he adopted the name Pachacuti, meaning Earthshaker, or Transformer of the World, a name that perfectly encapsulated the profound changes he would bring to the Inca state. The immediate consequences of the Chanca War were multifaceted. Militarily, it eliminated the most significant rival to Inca dominance in the southern highlands, securing the Cusco Valley and its immediate surroundings. Politically, it cemented Pachacuti's position as the Sapa Inca, enabling him to initiate the sweeping reforms that would transform the Inca kingdom into an empire. Ideologically, the victory instilled a strong sense of divine destiny among the Inca, reinforcing their belief that they were chosen by Inti, the sun god, to bring order and civilization to the Andean world. The Chanca War was therefore the foundational conflict that propelled the Inca from a regional power to the architects of Tahuantinsuyu. Following the decisive victory in the Chanca War, Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui, the newly established Sapa Inca, embarked on an ambitious and systematic program of military expansion that fundamentally transformed the Inca kingdom into a vast empire. His campaigns, driven by a strategic vision of consolidating Andean power under Inca hegemony, extended Inca dominion across significant portions of the Andean highlands. Pachacuti's initial military efforts focused on securing the southern highlands. He directed campaigns towards the Lake Titicaca Basin, incorporating powerful groups such as the Colla and Lupaca. These were not merely acts of conquest but often involved strategic negotiations and the integration of local leadership. The Inca military, reorganized and professionalized under Pachacuti, employed disciplined tactics, utilizing both infantry and slingers, and adapting to diverse Andean terrains. Success in these southern campaigns provided the Inca with control over vital agricultural lands and significant population centers, expanding their resource base. Subsequently, Pachacuti turned his attention northward, extending Inca influence into the central highlands. His forces advanced through valleys and mountain passes, encountering various independent chiefdoms. The Inca approach to conquest under Pachacuti was often multifaceted. It involved a calculated blend of military pressure and diplomatic overtures. Conquered groups were frequently presented with the option of peaceful integration into the burgeoning empire. This often entailed retaining their local leaders, known as curacas, provided they pledged loyalty to the Sapa Inca, adopted certain Inca administrative practices, and participated in the mita system, contributing labor to state projects. This policy aimed to minimize prolonged resistance and facilitate smoother assimilation. However, resistance was met with decisive military force. Fortified settlements that refused Inca overtures were besieged, and their populations subjected to conquest. In instances of persistent rebellion or strategic importance, Pachacuti implemented the Mitmac policy, a system of forced resettlement. Loyal populations were moved into newly conquered territories to reinforce Inca control, while rebellious groups were relocated to established Inca heartlands, disrupting their social cohesion and preventing future insurrections. This policy served both as a punitive measure and a tool for demographic engineering to integrate diverse ethnic groups. The consolidation of these newly acquired territories was achieved through a comprehensive administrative framework. Pachacuti reinforced the Tahuantinsuyu structure, dividing the empire into 4 distinct suyus or quarters, each managed by an appointed apu. This centralized system allowed for effective governance and resource extraction across vast distances. The construction and expansion of the Capac Ñan, the extensive Inca road network, were accelerated during his reign. These roads facilitated rapid troop movement, communication via chasquis, runners, and the efficient transport of goods and resources, thereby physically binding the empire together. Furthermore, Pachacuti standardized the quipu system, establishing vast state storehouses throughout the empire to manage surplus agricultural production and other resources. These strategic reserves were crucial for supporting the military, feeding laborers engaged in public works, and mitigating the effects of localized famines. The promotion of Quechua as the official administrative language and the systematic spread of the state-sponsored sun cult, Inti worship, also served as powerful tools for cultural assimilation and ideological unification. Through these innovative strategies of conquest, assimilation, and administrative integration, Pachacuti transformed a regional kingdom into a formidable imperial entity, laying the enduring foundations of the Inca Empire. Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui's vision for the burgeoning Inca Empire extended significantly beyond military conquest to encompass monumental architecture, fundamentally transforming the urban landscape of Cusco and establishing iconic structures that symbolized Inca power and engineering prowess. This ambitious building program was central to consolidating imperial control and projecting the Inca's divine mandate. Cusco, the imperial capital, underwent a profound metamorphosis under Pachacuti's direction. He initiated a comprehensive urban redesign, transforming the city into a meticulously planned imperial center. Historical accounts and archaeological evidence suggest that Cusco was laid out in the shape of a puma, a sacred animal in Andean cosmology, with the confluence of the Safi and Tulumayo rivers forming its tail and the fortress of Sacsayhuaman representing its head. This deliberate zoomorphic design underscored the city's symbolic importance as the heart of Tahuantinsuyu. Within this grand plan, key structures were erected or significantly expanded. The Coricancha, or Temple of the Sun, became the empire's primary religious edifice, its walls reportedly adorned with sheets of gold. Its precise stonemasonry, particularly the curved wall of the Sun Temple, demonstrates advanced architectural skill. Other important imperial buildings included the palaces of the Sapa Incas, administrative centers, and vast plazas designed for public ceremonies. The construction involved the channeling of rivers through stone-lined canals and the creation of extensive terraces to maximize usable urban space. Perched on a hill overlooking Cusco, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman stands as a testament to Inca engineering. Its construction, initiated or significantly expanded during Pachacuti's reign, involved the quarrying, transportation, and precise fitting of colossal stone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons. The fortress features 3 parallel zigzag walls, each rising above the other, forming a formidable defensive barrier. The largest stones are found in the lowest wall, meticulously interlocked without the use of mortar. This dry stone masonry technique, characteristic of high-status Inca architecture, involved shaping individual stones to fit perfectly against their neighbors, creating joints so tight that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. This precision not only provided structural stability, but also rendered the structures remarkably resistant to seismic activity, a frequent occurrence in the Andean region. The logistical challenges of constructing Sacsayhuaman were immense. It required the mobilization of thousands of laborers through the mythical system, utilizing sophisticated techniques for moving and lifting the massive stones from distant quarries. Ramps, levers, and human power were employed in a coordinated effort that speaks to the Incas' organizational capabilities. While primarily a fortress, its strategic location and monumental scale also indicate its significance as a ceremonial site, likely used for important state rituals and festivals, particularly those related to the sun cult. Its commanding view of Cusco reinforced the Incas' control over the capital and their dominion over the surrounding valley. The architectural achievements of Cusco and Sacsayhuaman under Pachacuti's direction were not merely functional, they were powerful statements of imperial authority, religious devotion, and unparalleled engineering prowess, solidifying the Incas' position as the dominant force in the Andes. The Inca, famously without a phonetic written script, developed an intricate and highly sophisticated system of record-keeping known as the quipu. These devices, composed of cotton or camelid fiber cords, served as a primary tool for administration, census-taking, economic management, and potentially even historical narrative, highlighting the complex intellectual life of the Inca Empire. The term quipu derives from the Quechua word for knot, directly reflecting their construction. A quipu typically consists of a main horizontal cord from which numerous pendant cords hang. Subsidiary cords, or even subsubsidiary cords, could then branch off the pendant cords. Information was encoded through a combination of the type of fiber used, the color of the cords, the direction of the knots, the placement of the knots along the cords, and the numerical value of the knots themselves. The most common type of quipu recorded quantitative data using a decimal system. Knots represented numerical values, single knots for units, long knots for tens, and figure-8 knots for hundreds or thousands, arranged in a base, 10-positional system. The absence of a knot in a particular position indicated a zero. The primary function of these numerical quipus was administrative. Inca officials, known as quipu Camayos, quipu keepers, meticulously recorded census data, including population figures, age groups, and labor quotas. Agricultural production, livestock inventories, and the distribution of goods from state storehouses, qualquas, were also precisely documented. This allowed the centralized Inca government to manage vast resources, allocate labor for the mita system, and ensure the efficient functioning of their complex economy across Tahuantinsuyu. Tribute payments, collected from conquered provinces in the form of labor or goods, were likewise recorded on quipus, providing a comprehensive overview of the empire's wealth. Beyond quantitative data, there is significant scholarly debate regarding the capacity of quipus to record non-numerical information, such as historical events, laws, or narratives. Some researchers propose the existence of narrative quipus, or literary quipus, suggesting that different knot types, cord colors, and arrangements could represent abstract concepts or specific historical sequences. While the precise decipherment of such potential narrative quipus remains an ongoing challenge, the historical accounts from Spanish chroniclers often mention quipu Camayos, reciting historical narratives or legal precedents from their quipus, implying a mnemonic or symbolic capacity beyond mere accounting. The quipu Camayos were highly trained specialists, often hereditary, who underwent rigorous education to master the complex art of quipu creation and interpretation. Their expertise was crucial for the functioning of the Inca bureaucracy. The existence of the quipu system underscores the Incas' sophisticated intellectual achievements in data management and information storage, enabling them to govern a vast and diverse empire without a conventional written language. The quipu stands as a unique testament to their ingenuity and organizational capacity, representing a distinct form of knowledge transmission in the pre-Columbian Americas. The vastness of the Inca Empire, Tahuantinsuyu, necessitated the development of an unparalleled road system known as the Capac Ñan, or Royal Road. This intricate network, stretching over 30 kilometers across the diverse Andean terrain, was a monumental feat of engineering and a critical component of Inca imperial control. Its construction, meticulous maintenance, and strategic utilization were fundamental to the empire's military logistics, communication infrastructure, and economic integration. The Capac Ñan was not a single road, but a comprehensive system composed of two principal longitudinal routes, one traversing the arid Pacific coast and the other winding through the high Andes. Numerous transversal roads connected these main arteries, linking coastal regions with highland valleys and extending into the Amazonian lowlands. The design of the roads varied according to the local topography and available materials. In flat coastal deserts, roads were often marked by low walls or stone piles. In the mountains, they were meticulously paved with stone, carved into cliff faces, or built on elevated causeways across marshy areas. The average width of the main roads ranged from 1 to 4 meters, though some sections, particularly near major administrative centers, could be significantly wider. Engineering challenges were overcome with remarkable ingenuity. The Inca constructed thousands of bridges to span rivers and ravines. These included suspension bridges woven from ichu grass, cantilever bridges using stone and timber, pontoon bridges on rafts, and even floating bridges made of reeds. Tunnels were carved through solid rock, and steep mountain slopes were ascended via stone staircases. These structures were not merely functional, but were often integrated harmoniously with the natural landscape, demonstrating advanced civil engineering principles. The construction and maintenance of the Capac Ñan were managed through the Mita labor system, mobilizing vast numbers of commoners from across the empire. Each Ailu, kin group, was responsible for building and maintaining the section of the road that passed through its territory, ensuring continuous upkeep of the entire network. The Capac Ñan served vital roles in the administration and functioning of the Inca Empire. Militarily, it enabled the rapid deployment of troops and supplies, allowing the Inca to quickly suppress rebellions or launch new campaigns across vast distances. Garrisons and military outposts were strategically located along the roads, providing logistical support and security. For communication, the roads facilitated the efficient operation of the chasqui system. These highly trained relay runners carried messages, often in the form of quipus, across the empire at remarkable speeds, covering distances of up to 240 kilometers per day. This rapid information flow was crucial for the centralized governance of Tahuantinsuyu. Economically, the Capac Ñan was essential for trade and the redistribution of goods. While the Inca economy was not based on market exchange, the state managed the movement of surplus agricultural products, textiles, and other resources between different ecological zones and administrative centers. Goods from kulakers, storehouses, were transported along the roads to support state projects, feed the army, or provide relief during localized famines. The roads also facilitated the movement of mitmacs, resettled populations and administrators, further integrating diverse regions into the imperial system. The Capac Ñan thus represents a fundamental physical manifestation of Inca imperial power, demonstrating their organizational capacity, engineering skill, and the strategic importance of infrastructure in governing a vast pre-industrial empire. Topa Inca Yupanqui, the 10th Supper Inca and son of Pachacuti, continued the ambitious imperial expansion with remarkable vigor, solidifying and extending the boundaries of Tahuantinsuyu to its greatest territorial extent. His reign, beginning around 1471 CE, was characterized by extensive military campaigns and significant administrative consolidation, building directly upon the foundations laid by his father. Topa Inca's military efforts primarily focused on two directions: northward into what is now Ecuador and southern Colombia, and southward into Chile and Argentina. In the north, his campaigns were particularly challenging, encountering fierce resistance from powerful chiefdoms such as the Cañari and the Chachapoya. The Inca military employed sophisticated strategies, including large-scale troop movements, siege warfare against fortified settlements, and the construction of new administrative centers and garrisons to secure conquered territories. The incorporation of these northern regions brought diverse ethnic groups and new ecological zones, including tropical lowlands, under Inca control. This expansion was vital for accessing new resources and extending Inca influence over important trade routes. To the south, Topa Inca's forces pushed into what is now central Chile and northwestern Argentina. Here, they encountered the resilient Mapuche people, who proved to be a formidable adversary. While the Inca managed to establish control over parts of these territories, their expansion was eventually checked by the sustained resistance of the Mapuche, marking the effective southern limit of the empire. This southern frontier required continuous military presence and strategic fortifications to maintain Inca authority. Beyond military conquest, Topa Inca was a significant administrator. He refined and expanded the administrative structures established by Pachacuti, ensuring efficient governance over the vast and diverse empire. He is credited with further developing the Capac Ñan, the imperial road system, and improving the network of quilcas, storehouses, to manage the immense resources flowing into Cusco. His reign saw the systematic implementation of Inca policies, including the Mita labor draft and the Mitmac resettlement program, to integrate conquered populations and consolidate imperial control. He personally traveled extensively throughout the empire, inspecting infrastructure, resolving disputes, and reinforcing Inca authority, demonstrating a hands-on approach to governance. An intriguing, albeit highly debated, aspect of Topa Inca's reign involves alleged maritime expeditions into the Pacific Ocean. Spanish chroniclers, notably Pedro Sarmiento de Gamboa, recorded accounts suggesting that Topa Inca embarked on voyages to distant islands, possibly Easter Island, Rapa Nui, or other Polynesian islands, around 1465 CE. These accounts claim that he returned with dark-skinned captives, gold, and other exotic goods. While archaeological evidence of direct pre-Columbian contact between the Andes and Polynesia remains inconclusive, the existence of these narratives in Inca oral tradition suggests a historical memory of significant maritime activity or exploration, even if the precise destinations are unconfirmed. The debate among scholars continues, with some pointing to shared cultural elements or botanical transfers as potential, though not definitive, evidence, while others view the accounts as exaggerated or symbolic. Regardless of their historical veracity, these narratives highlight the Incas' advanced navigational capabilities and their conceptualization of a world extending beyond the Andean landmass. Topa Inca's reign thus represents a critical period of imperial consolidation and expansion, pushing the Inca Empire to its zenith both geographically and administratively. Under the reign of Huayna Capac, the 11th Sapa Inca, the Inca Empire, Tahuantinsuyu, reached its territorial and administrative zenith. Succeeding his father Topa Inca Yupanqui around 1493 CE, Huayna Capac inherited a vast and complex state, which he further consolidated and expanded, stretching from the Ancasmayo River in modern-day southern Colombia to the Maule River in central Chile, and encompassing significant portions of Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and northwestern Argentina. Huayna Capac's early reign was characterized by campaigns to solidify Inca control over newly conquered northern territories, particularly in what is now Ecuador. He faced persistent resistance from groups like the Caranqui, requiring significant military resources and prolonged engagements. His strategies included the construction of new imperial centers, such as Tumabamba, modern Cuenca, which served as a secondary capital and a key administrative hub for the northern provinces. This northern expansion was crucial for integrating diverse populations and accessing new resources, but it also presented ongoing challenges in maintaining stability and loyalty. The sheer scale of the empire under Huayna Capac presented significant administrative challenges. Governing a realm that encompassed diverse ecological zones, numerous ethnic groups, and vast geographical distances required sophisticated management. To address this, Huayna Capac continued to refine the centralized administrative system. He reinforced the authority of the four suyus, quarters, and their respective apus, governors, ensuring that imperial directives were efficiently disseminated and resources effectively managed. The Capac Ñan, the imperial road system, was meticulously maintained and expanded, facilitating rapid communication via chasquis, relay runners, and the movement of troops and goods. Innovations in governance under Huayna Capac included further standardization of the Mita labor system, ensuring a consistent supply of labor for state projects, including agricultural terracing, road construction, and the maintenance of quilquas, storehouses. These quilcas, strategically located throughout the empire, held vast reserves of food, textiles, and other commodities, crucial for supporting the state apparatus, the military, and providing famine relief. The Mitmac resettlement policy was also extensively utilized to integrate rebellious populations and to spread Inca cultural and linguistic influence, particularly the Quechua language. Huayna Capac frequently traveled throughout the empire, personally inspecting provinces, overseeing public works, and engaging with local curacas, chiefs. This hands-on approach to governance, often accompanied by elaborate retinues and ceremonies, served to reinforce imperial authority and foster a sense of direct connection between the Sapa Inca and his subjects. His presence was a powerful symbol of the empire's unity and strength. He also initiated significant building projects, including palaces and temples in various provincial centers, further cementing Inca presence and ideology across the vast realm. The prosperity of the empire at its peak was evident in its robust agricultural output, efficient resource distribution, and the continuous flow of goods and labor to the imperial center. However, the very vastness and diversity of Tahuantinsuyu also contained inherent vulnerabilities. The challenges of integrating disparate ethnic groups, maintaining loyalty over immense distances, and managing the logistical complexities of such a large state would become acutely apparent following Huayna Capac's unexpected death, which tragically occurred from a European disease, likely smallpox, before the arrival of the Spanish. His demise, without a clear successor, directly precipitated the civil war that would fatally weaken the empire. The Inca Empire, Tahuantinsuyu, governed a vast and diverse territory through a highly centralized and remarkably efficient administrative system. This intricate bureaucracy was essential for maintaining order, extracting resources, and integrating numerous ethnic groups across immense geographical distances. At the apex of this system was the Sapa Inca, who held absolute authority, considered a living deity, and the direct descendant of the sun god, Inti. His divine status provided the ultimate legitimization for all imperial policies and decisions, ensuring unquestioning obedience from the populace. The empire was systematically divided into four major administrative regions, or suyus: Chinchay Suyu to the north, Anti Suyu to the east, Kula Suyu to the south, and Kunti Suyu to the west. Each suyu was governed by an apu, a high-ranking official, typically a close relative of the Sapa Inca, who held significant military and administrative power. These apus reported directly to the Sapa Inca and his council, ensuring centralized control over the vast realm. This quadripartite division was not merely geographical, but reflected a sophisticated organizational principle that permeated all levels of Inca administration. Beneath the apu level, the administrative hierarchy extended down through a decimal system of organization. Populations were grouped into units of 10, 100, 1, 0, 10, 0, and 40 0 households, each overseen by an appointed official. These officials, known by various titles such as Pachacuti, leader of 100 households, or Waranka Kamayuk, leader of 10 households, were responsible for census taking, labor allocation, and tax collection within their respective jurisdictions. This granular control allowed the Inca state to meticulously track its population and resources. A critical component of this bureaucracy was the quipu, specialists responsible for creating and interpreting quipus, the knotted cord devices used for record keeping. These individuals meticulously recorded demographic data, agricultural yields, livestock inventories, and tribute obligations, providing the central government with precise statistical information vital for planning and resource management. The tuku, or he who sees all, were imperial inspectors who traveled throughout the empire, monitoring local officials, ensuring compliance with Inca laws, and reporting directly to the Sapa Inca. Their presence underscored the centralized nature of control and served as a deterrent against corruption or rebellion. Local administration was often managed through existing indigenous structures. Conquered curacas, local chiefs, were frequently allowed to retain their positions, provided they demonstrated loyalty to the Inca and facilitated the implementation of imperial policies. This strategy minimized disruption and leveraged existing social hierarchies, but curacas were closely supervised, and their children sometimes sent to Cusco for education, ensuring their indoctrination into Inca ideology. The administrative system facilitated the efficient operation of the Mita labor system, which was the backbone of the Inca economy. Through this system, commoners contributed labor to state projects, including the construction and maintenance of the Capac Ñan road network, agricultural terraces, and quilquas, state storehouses. These quilquas, managed by the administration, held vast reserves of food, textiles, and other commodities which were redistributed to support the military, state laborers, and provide relief during times of scarcity. The extensive road network, maintained by the Mita, was crucial for rapid communication via chasquis, relay runners, and the movement of troops, binding the empire together physically and administratively. The Incas' centralized administration, therefore, was a sophisticated apparatus that enabled them to govern a vast and diverse empire with remarkable efficiency and control. The Mita system constituted the fundamental economic and organizational backbone of the Inca Empire, Suyu. Rather than a system of monetary taxation, the Inca state operated on a labor-based economy, mobilizing vast segments of its population for public works and state service through this compulsory, rotational labor draft. Every able-bodied commoner household, primarily male heads of families, was obligated to contribute a specified period of labor to the state each year. This service was meticulously organized and administered through the decimal bureaucratic hierarchy, ensuring systematic resource allocation across the empire. The Mita system was instrumental in the construction and maintenance of the Incas' extensive agricultural infrastructure. Laborers were conscripted to build and expand the intricate terracing systems known as Andeans, which transformed steep Andean hillsides into productive agricultural land. These terraces, often supported by sophisticated stone retaining walls, maximized arable land and prevented soil erosion in challenging topographies. Concurrently, Mita workers constructed and maintained vast networks of irrigation canals, diverting water from rivers and mountain springs to cultivate crops in arid regions, thereby ensuring food security for the growing imperial population. These projects required advanced engineering knowledge and coordinated mass labor. Beyond agriculture, the Mita was the driving force behind the empire's unparalleled transportation infrastructure. It facilitated the construction and continuous upkeep of the Capac Ñan, the extensive Inca road network. Laborers built paved roads, carved tunnels through mountains, and constructed various types of bridges, including impressive suspension bridges woven from plant fibers, cantilever bridges, and pontoon bridges. This massive road system, vital for communication and military deployment, was entirely dependent on the sustained labor contributions from local communities. Furthermore, The myta system supported the monumental urban and ceremonial construction projects that characterized Inca imperial power. Workers were mobilized to build magnificent stone temples, such as the Coricancha in Cusco, royal palaces, administrative centers, and fortresses like Sacsayhuaman. These structures, often employing sophisticated dry stone masonry, required immense human effort for quarrying, transporting, and precisely fitting colossal stone blocks. The construction of quilcars, the vast state storehouses, also relied on myta labor, ensuring that surplus agricultural goods, textiles, and other commodities were collected and stored for state use, military provisions, and famine relief. The myta also served as the primary mechanism for military recruitment. Able-bodied men were periodically drafted into the Inca army, undergoing training and participating in military campaigns. This ensured a continuous supply of personnel for imperial expansion and the maintenance of order within conquered territories. In return for their labor, the state provided myta workers with food, tools, and organizational support, embodying a form of state-controlled reciprocity. This system allowed the Inca to mobilize resources and human capital on an unprecedented scale, making it a unique and highly effective form of state-controlled resource allocation that underpinned the entire imperial economy and its ambitious public works. The Ayllu, a traditional Andean kinship and territorial unit, formed the fundamental building block of Inca society, serving as the primary organizational structure from the local level up to the imperial administration. This enduring institution predated the Inca Empire and was skillfully integrated into its centralized system, illustrating a unique blend of local autonomy and imperial control. An Ayllu was essentially a group of families who traced their descent from a common ancestor, often a mythical founder, and collectively owned a specific tract of land. Membership was typically hereditary, and individuals were born into an Ayllu, which provided them with a social safety net, mutual aid, and a defined role within the community. The core function of the Ayllu revolved around communal land ownership and cooperative labor. Land was not privately owned by individuals but belonged to the Ayllu as a whole. Each year, or periodically, plots of land were allocated to individual families based on their size and needs, granting them usufruct rights for cultivation. This ensured that every member had access to the means of subsistence. Beyond individual family plots, Aylus also maintained communal lands, which were worked collectively for the benefit of the entire group, often designated for supporting the curaca, local chief, or for communal reserves. This system fostered strong bonds of reciprocity and collective responsibility, central tenets of Andean social organization. When the Inca Empire expanded, it incorporated existing Aylus into its administrative framework rather than dismantling them. The Ayllu became the basic unit for the decimal census system, through which the Inca state tracked its population and organized labor. The curacas, the traditional leaders of the Aylus, served as intermediaries between their communities and the imperial administration. While they retained a degree of traditional authority, they were also responsible for ensuring their Ayllu's compliance with Inca demands, including the myta labor service and the provision of resources. This dual role meant curacas had to balance the welfare of their Ayllu with the demands of the Sapa Inca. The Ayllu's most significant contribution to the Inca state was its participation in the myta system. Each Ayllu was obligated to provide a certain number of its members for rotational labor service on state projects. This included work on agricultural terraces, road construction, building temples and palaces, mining, and military service. The Ayllu itself was responsible for organizing its members to fulfill these quotas, often through internal rotations and collective support for those performing myta. In return for this labor, the Inca state provided food, tools, and organization, embodying a form of state-level reciprocity that mirrored the traditional Aini reciprocal labor practices within the Ayllu. While the Inca imposed imperial control through their administrative hierarchy, the Ayllu retained a significant degree of local autonomy in its internal affairs, including managing its communal lands, resolving minor disputes, and maintaining its specific cultural traditions. This strategic integration of pre-existing social structures allowed the Inca to govern a vast and diverse empire efficiently, leveraging established community bonds and labor systems while extending imperial authority and resource extraction. The Ayllu thus served as the enduring foundation that supported the entire edifice of Inca imperial power. Inca religion was a complex and integral component of their daily lives, deeply intertwined with nature, cosmology, and the functioning of the state. It was a polytheistic system, incorporating a vast pantheon of deities associated with natural phenomena, ancestral figures, and abstract concepts, reflecting the diverse spiritual traditions of the Andean peoples incorporated into Tahuantinsuyu. At the apex of the Inca pantheon stood Viracocha, the creator god, who was believed to have formed the universe, the sun, moon, stars, and all living beings. While revered as the ultimate creator, Viracocha's direct cult was less widespread than that of Inti, the sun god. Inti was the most important state deity, considered the divine ancestor of the Sapa Inca and the source of warmth, light, and agricultural fertility. The Sapa Inca, as the son of the sun, served as the principal intermediary between Inti and the human world, legitimizing imperial rule. Inti's primary temple, the Coricancha in Cusco, was adorned with gold, symbolizing the sun's brilliance. Mamaquilla, the moon goddess, was Inti's consort and held significant importance, particularly for women. She was associated with the calendar, fertility, and the tides. Ilapa, the god of thunder, lightning, and rain, was crucial for agricultural success in the highlands, controlling meteorological phenomena vital for crops. Pachamama, the Earth Mother, was a widely venerated deity representing fertility, abundance, and the earth itself, receiving offerings for successful harvests and healthy livestock. Other significant deities included Mamakosha, Mother of the Sea, important for coastal populations, and various stellar deities. Central to Inca religious practice was the concept of huacas. These were not merely idols but sacred places, objects, or entities imbued with spiritual power. Huacas could be natural features like mountains, rivers, springs, caves, or uniquely shaped stones. They could also be man-made structures such as temples, tombs, or even the mummified remains of ancestors. Each Ayllu king group had its own huacas, and the state also maintained imperial huacas, creating a pervasive sacred landscape across the empire. Pilgrimages to prominent huacas were common, reinforcing both religious devotion and imperial authority. Rituals and offerings were fundamental to Inca religion, designed to maintain cosmic balance and appease the deities. Animal sacrifices, particularly of llamas and guinea pigs, were common, with their hearts and blood offered to the gods. Human sacrifice, known as Capac, was a rare but significant state-sponsored ritual, typically performed during times of major crisis, such as famine, war, or the death of a Sapa Inca, or to mark significant imperial events. Children, often selected for their physical perfection, were offered to the gods, symbolizing the ultimate sacrifice to ensure divine favor. Other offerings included coca leaves, chicha, maize beer, textiles, and precious metals. A complex priestly hierarchy managed religious affairs, with the Wilka Uma, the high priest of the sun, second only to the Sapa Inca in authority. Priests performed ceremonies, interpreted omens, and oversaw the maintenance of huacas. Divination, through various methods including coca leaf reading and animal entrails, was widely practiced to gain insight into divine will. Inca religion permeated all aspects of daily life, from agricultural cycles and building projects to social organization and political legitimacy, providing a cohesive ideological framework for the empire. The veneration of ancestors, particularly the mummified remains of deceased Sapa Incas, constituted a central and deeply influential feature of Inca religion and politics. This practice, known as the cult of the ancestors, extended beyond mere remembrance, as the mummies were considered active participants in the social and political life of the empire. This system underscored the continuity of royal authority and the enduring power of lineage within Inca society. Upon the death of a Sapa Inca, his body underwent an elaborate mummification process. This involved the removal of internal organs, the desiccation of the body, and its careful preservation through various techniques, including exposure to the dry Andean air and the application of resins. The mummified remains, known as molkis, were then dressed in fine textiles and adorned with royal regalia, maintaining the appearance of the living ruler. Unlike many other cultures where mummies were interred permanently, Inca royal malquis remained accessible and were treated as living entities. Each deceased Sapa Inca retained his own property, including lands, palaces, and retainers, which were managed by his panaca. A panaca was a royal kin group or lineage, comprising all the male descendants of a Sapa Inca, excluding his successor, and all his female descendants. The primary function of a panaca was to serve and maintain the molki of its founder. This involved daily rituals, including feeding the mummy, symbolically, by offering food and drink, dressing it, and attending to its needs. The panaca also managed the vast estates associated with the deceased Inca, utilizing their resources to support the mummy's cult and the lineage members. The malquis of the Sapa Incas were not confined to tombs. They were regularly brought out for public ceremonies, festivals, and important political gatherings in Cusco's main plaza. During these events, the mummies were seated on thrones, offered food and drink, and consulted on matters of state. Their presence at these assemblies symbolized the continuity of Inca rule and the enduring legitimacy of the imperial lineage. They were even married to other mummies in symbolic alliances, reinforcing political bonds between different panacas. This active participation of the dead in the affairs of the living was a unique aspect of Inca political and religious life, providing a powerful ideological tool for social cohesion. The existence of panacas and the cult of the ancestors created a distinctive dynamic within Inca succession. Each new Sapa Inca had to establish his own panaca and acquire his own wealth and resources, as he did not inherit the property of his predecessor. This system, known as split inheritance, provided a continuous impetus for imperial expansion. To secure resources for their own panacas, new Sapa Incas were compelled to conquer new territories, thereby expanding the empire's reach and ensuring a fresh supply of labor and tribute. This institutionalized ambition was a significant driver of Tahuantinsuyu's rapid growth. The veneration of ancestors was not limited to the Sapa Incas. Commoners also mummified their dead, though with less elaborate methods, and maintained their own local malquis within their islas. These ancestral figures were consulted for guidance, offered sacrifices, and played a role in local community rituals, reinforcing kinship ties and territorial claims. The pervasive nature of ancestor worship, from the imperial court to the smallest ilu, provided a cohesive, religious, and social framework that bound the diverse populations of the Inca Empire together under a shared reverence for the past and its enduring influence. Inti, the sun god, held paramount importance within the Inca religious hierarchy, serving as the most revered state deity and the divine ancestor of the Sapa Inca. This direct lineage from Inti provided the ultimate legitimization for Inca imperial rule, positioning the Sapa Inca as a living manifestation of the sun's power and an essential intermediary between the human and divine realms. The cult of Inti was meticulously organized and permeated all aspects of Inca statecraft and daily life, reflecting the sun's vital role in providing warmth, light, and sustaining agricultural fertility in the high Andean environment. The epicenter of Inti worship was the Coricancha, or Golden Enclosure, located in Cusco, the imperial capital. This temple complex was the most sacred site in the Inca Empire, a testament to Inca architectural and metallurgical prowess. Its walls were constructed with the finest dry stone masonry, featuring precisely cut and fitted ashlar blocks that formed perfectly smooth surfaces. Historical accounts from Spanish chroniclers, such as Pedro Cieza de Leon, describe the temple's interior as being literally covered with sheets of gold, symbolizing the sun's radiant energy. The main sanctuary, dedicated to Inti, housed a large golden image of the sun, often depicted with a human face, and was positioned to capture the first rays of the morning sun. Beyond the main temple to Inti, the Coricancha complex included shrines dedicated to other celestial bodies and deities important to the Inca pantheon, such as Mamaquilla, the moon, Chasca, the stars, and Ilapa, thunder and lightning. These subsidiary temples were similarly adorned with precious metals corresponding to their respective deities, silver for the moon and stars, and gold for thunder and lightning. The Coricancha also contained a meticulously maintained garden, reportedly filled with golden and silver replicas of maize, plants, llamas, and human figures, further emphasizing the temple's role as a microcosm of the Inca cosmos and a repository of imperial wealth. Solar observations were fundamental to Inca religion and were intricately linked to their agricultural and ritual calendars. The Inca developed sophisticated astronomical knowledge, utilizing structures like the Coricancha and other observation points to track the sun's movements. The precise alignment of architectural features within the Coricancha allowed priests to determine solstices and equinoxes, critical dates for agricultural cycles and state ceremonies. For instance, the June solstice, marking the shortest day of the year in the southern hemisphere, was celebrated with the elaborate Inti Raymi festival, the most important religious event in the Inca calendar, dedicated to rejuvenating the sun and ensuring continued agricultural abundance. The Intihuatana, or hitching post of the sun, found at sites like Machu Picchu, also served as astronomical markers, allowing Inca priests to precisely track the sun's position. These structures, often carved from natural rock, embodied the Incas' ability to integrate natural features with their religious and scientific understanding. The systematic observation of the sun's path guided planting and harvesting seasons, determined the timing of religious festivals, and reinforced the Sapa Inca's divine connection to Inti, solidifying the ideological foundations of the empire. The cult of Inti, therefore, was not merely a set of beliefs, but a comprehensive system that organized Inca society, legitimized its rulers, and ensured its prosperity through a profound connection to the celestial cycles. The Inca mastered the challenging Andean environment through a remarkable array of agricultural innovations, fundamentally transforming steep, diverse landscapes into highly productive food systems. Their sophisticated engineering and agronomic practices were crucial for sustaining a large and growing imperial population, ensuring food security across Tahuantinsuyu. A primary manifestation of Inca agricultural ingenuity was their extensive terracing systems known as andenes. These stepped platforms, often constructed on steep mountainsides, served multiple critical functions. Structurally, andenes prevented soil erosion by creating flat, arable surfaces where none naturally existed. They were typically built with precisely fitted stone retaining walls, filled with layers of gravel, sand, and topsoil, creating optimal drainage and nutrient retention. The design often incorporated a slight backward slope to capture rainwater effectively. The construction of these terraces required immense communal labor, mobilized through the Mita system, demonstrating the Incas' organizational capacity to undertake monumental public works. The Andenes also created microclimates, as the stone walls absorbed solar radiation during the day and radiated heat at night, extending the growing season and allowing for the cultivation of a wider variety of crops at higher altitudes. Complementing the terracing systems were sophisticated irrigation networks. The Inca developed extensive canals, aqueducts, and reservoirs to divert water from rivers, glacial melt, and natural springs to agricultural fields, particularly in arid coastal regions and high-altitude valleys. These hydraulic engineering feats involved precise calculations of gradient and flow, often traversing challenging terrain. Canals were sometimes lined with stone to prevent water loss through seepage and to ensure durability. Examples like the Tipon complex near Cusco showcase intricate systems of water distribution, demonstrating the Incas' ability to manage water resources efficiently for large-scale cultivation. The integration of irrigation with terracing allowed for intensive agriculture in areas that would otherwise be unproductive, significantly increasing arable land and crop yields. The Inca also practiced highly diversified crop cultivation, adapting to the varied ecological zones of their empire. They cultivated over 70 different plant species, demonstrating a profound understanding of Andean biodiversity. Staple crops included numerous varieties of potatoes and other tubers, like oca and aluco, which were resilient to frost and could be grown at high altitudes. Maize, while also cultivated in terraced fields, was particularly important for state rituals and the elite, requiring warmer temperatures and more intensive irrigation. Other significant crops included quinoa, beans, squash, and various fruits and vegetables adapted to specific microclimates. The Inca developed methods of food preservation, such as freeze-drying potatoes to produce chuño and sun-drying meat into charqui, which allowed for long-term storage and distribution, crucial for supporting the military and mitigating famine. This combination of advanced agricultural engineering, meticulous water management, and diverse crop cultivation ensured a remarkably stable and abundant food supply for the Inca Empire. The Andeans and irrigation systems not only maximized agricultural output but also represented a profound transformation of the Andean landscape, enabling the sustenance of millions and underpinning the economic prosperity and administrative stability of Tahuantinsuyu. To sustain their vast population, support their military, and manage their labor-based economy, the Inca developed an impressive and highly efficient system of food storage and distribution centered around specialized state storehouses known as quilquas. This logistical infrastructure was critical for ensuring food security and maintaining imperial control across Tahuantinsuyu. Quilquas were typically stone or adobe structures, often circular or rectangular in shape, designed for optimal preservation of agricultural products. Their construction varied based on the regional climate and the type of goods stored. In the highlands, quilquas were frequently built on elevated, well-drained slopes, often with stone foundations and thatched roofs, to ensure good ventilation and prevent moisture accumulation, which could lead to spoilage. Some were equipped with sophisticated drainage systems and raised floors to protect contents from dampness and pests. On the arid coast, quilquas might be excavated into the ground or constructed with thick adobe walls to maintain cool, stable temperatures. The design prioritized passive ventilation and protection from rodents and insects, crucial for long-term storage of perishable goods. The strategic placement of quilquas was a hallmark of Inca logistical genius. They were not randomly distributed but were systematically located along the Capac Ñan imperial road network near administrative centers, military garrisons, and major agricultural production zones. This decentralized network of storage facilities allowed for rapid access to supplies wherever they were needed across the empire. Large complexes of quilquas could contain thousands of individual storage units, forming veritable granaries that dwarfed local storage capacities. Examples include the extensive quilca fields at Pisac and Ollantaytambo, demonstrating their integration with imperial administrative centers. The management of these storehouses was a highly organized administrative undertaking. Local curacas, chiefs, and imperial officials were responsible for overseeing the collection of surplus agricultural produce from their respective Aylus kin groups as part of the Mita labor obligation. These goods, which included staple crops like potatoes, maize, quinoa, and chuño, freeze-dried potatoes, as well as textiles, tools, and other commodities, were then meticulously recorded and inventoried using quipus. Quipuca Mayox, quipu keepers, maintained precise records of incoming and outgoing supplies, allowing the central government in Cusco to have a comprehensive overview of the empire's reserves. The distribution of supplies from quilquas served multiple imperial purposes. They provided sustenance for the Inca army during military campaigns, ensuring that troops were well provisioned even in remote areas. They fed the vast labor force mobilized for Mita projects, such as road construction or monumental building. During times of localized famine or natural disaster, quilquas served as emergency relief centers, redistributing food to affected populations, thereby preventing widespread starvation and maintaining social stability. Furthermore, resources from quilquas were used to provision the Sapa Inca's court, the nobility, and the extensive bureaucracy. This state-controlled system of production, storage, and redistribution minimized the need for market exchange and underpinned the Incas' ability to exert centralized control over their vast and diverse empire, demonstrating their unparalleled capacity for logistical organization in the pre-Columbian world. Inca artistic expression was characterized by its precision, geometric patterns, and profound symbolic richness, reflecting a highly organized society with a deep connection to its cosmology and imperial ideology. Their mastery in textiles, ceramics, and metalwork produced artifacts that were not merely decorative, but served vital, social, political, and religious functions within Tahuantinsuyu. Textiles held the highest status among Inca art forms, considered more valuable than gold or silver. The Inca achieved unparalleled mastery in weaving, producing a vast array of fabrics for various purposes. The most esteemed was compi cloth, a finely woven textile made from alpaca or vicuña wool, known for its exceptional softness, intricate designs, and vibrant colors. Compi was produced by highly skilled male weavers, known as kumbika mayoks, working in specialized state workshops, or aklawasi, houses of chosen women. These textiles were used for royal garments, ceremonial purposes, offerings to deities, and as diplomatic gifts to allied curikas, chiefs. The designs on compi often featured abstract geometric patterns, stylized animals, and checkerboard motifs, which conveyed information about social status, regional identity, and imperial authority. Coarser textiles, made from llama wool or cotton, were produced for commoners and for use as tribute. The quality and type of textile an individual wore directly indicated their social standing within the rigid Inca hierarchy. Inca pottery, while often less ornate than that of some preceding Andean cultures, was distinctive for its functional elegance, standardized forms, and geometric decoration. The most iconic Inca ceramic form is the arabaloid jar, a large vessel with a pointed base, flared rim, and two handles designed for transporting and storing liquids, particularly chicha, maize beer. Other common forms included plates, bowls, and shallow dishes. Inca pottery was typically decorated with geometric motifs, such as triangles, squares, and stepped patterns, often painted in shades of red, black, white, and orange. These designs were often standardized across the empire, reflecting imperial control over production and dissemination of cultural forms. While mass-produced for administrative purposes, high-quality ceramics were also created for ritual use and elite consumption, showcasing fine craftsmanship and symbolic imagery. Inca metalwork, particularly in gold and silver, was renowned for its exquisite craftsmanship and symbolic significance. These precious metals were considered sweat of the sun, gold, and tears of the moon, silver, reflecting their divine origins and making them sacred materials reserved primarily for religious and imperial use. Inca metallurgists employed sophisticated techniques, including hammering, repousse, casting, and inlay, to create a wide array of objects. These included elaborate masks, ceremonial knives, tumi, figurines of humans and animals, often used as offerings, and adornments for the Sapa Inca and the nobility. Gold and silver were extensively used to decorate the Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun in Cusco, where entire walls were reportedly covered in gold sheets, and a garden featured life-sized golden replicas of maize, plants, and llamas. While the Spanish melted down most of these artifacts, surviving pieces demonstrate the Incas' mastery of metallurgy and their ability to imbue these objects with profound religious and political meaning, solidifying the Sapa Incas' divine connection and imperial power. The Inca military was a highly organized and effective force, instrumental in the rapid expansion and subsequent maintenance of Tawantinsuyu. Its structure and operational methods enabled the Inca to project power across vast and diverse territories, securing conquests and integrating newly acquired populations into the imperial system. The primary method of military recruitment was the mita system, a universal labor draft. Every able-bodied male commoner was obligated to serve in the army for a specified period each year. This ensured a continuous supply of personnel, allowing the Inca to field large armies for both offensive campaigns and defensive garrisons. Training was rigorous, focusing on discipline, physical conditioning, and proficiency with various weapons. Soldiers were organized into decimal units, reflecting the broader Inca administrative structure, with clear chains of command that facilitated efficient deployment and tactical coordination. Inca weaponry was adapted to the diverse Andean terrain and combat scenarios. Common offensive weapons included slings, huracas, that could propel stones with considerable force and accuracy, often used as initial missile barrages. Throwing spears, chuki and javelins were also prevalent. For close-quarters combat, soldiers utilized stone or bronze-headed maces, macanas, axes, and wooden clubs, often studded with stone or metal. Defensive equipment included wooden shields, sometimes reinforced with animal hides, and quilted cotton armor, which provided protection against projectiles and blunt force trauma. While not as heavily armored as some Old World armies, Inca forces were well equipped for their specific combat environment. Inca tactical strategies often began with diplomacy. Before outright military engagement, Inca envoys would offer potential subjects the opportunity to integrate peacefully into the empire, highlighting the benefits of Inca rule and the consequences of resistance. If negotiations failed, military force was applied. Inca armies employed disciplined battlefield formations, often utilizing their numerical superiority and logistical advantages. They were adept at siege warfare, constructing earthworks, and employing various methods to breach fortifications, including undermining walls and cutting off water supplies. Their ability to move large forces rapidly along the Capac Ñan road system provided a significant strategic advantage, allowing them to concentrate troops swiftly at points of conflict. Upon successful conquest, the Inca implemented a systematic approach to consolidation. Military garrisons were established in strategic locations throughout newly acquired territories. These permanent outposts, often fortified, served multiple functions, maintaining order, suppressing local rebellions, protecting imperial infrastructure like roads and storehouses, and ensuring the continued flow of tribute and labor to Cusco. The presence of these garrisons was a constant physical manifestation of Inca authority. A key element of securing conquered regions was the Micmac system. This involved the forced resettlement of populations. Loyal Inca subjects were moved into newly conquered, potentially rebellious areas to dilute local resistance and promote Inca culture. Conversely, rebellious or strategically important populations were sometimes relocated to established Inca heartlands, disrupting their social cohesion and preventing future insurrections. These resettlements were meticulously planned and managed by the state. The Micmac system, combined with the strategic placement of garrisons, the efficient road network, and the integration of local leaders under imperial oversight, allowed the Inca military to not only conquer vast territories, but also to effectively integrate them into the centralized administration of Tawantinsuyu. The Inca Empire maintained a strict, yet often pragmatic, system of law and justice that was fundamental to preserving order and integrating diverse populations across Tawantinsuyu. Inca law was not codified in written statutes, but was based on a set of core principles and customary practices, primarily disseminated through oral tradition and enforced by a hierarchical administrative structure. The overarching principles of Inca society, often summarized as ama killa, do not be lazy, ama lula, do not lie, and ama shua, do not steal, formed the moral and legal bedrock, emphasizing communal responsibility and adherence to state directives. The administration of justice operated on multiple levels, reflecting the centralized nature of Inca governance. At the local level, the curacas, local chiefs, and Ailu, king group, leaders were responsible for resolving minor disputes and enforcing customary law within their communities. These local courts dealt with issues such as land boundaries, marital disputes, and petty theft. Their decisions often emphasized reconciliation and restitution, aiming to restore harmony within the community rather than solely imposing punitive measures. For more serious offenses, or those involving individuals from different ayllus or provinces, cases would ascend to higher imperial courts. These judicial functions were often integrated with the general administrative hierarchy. Officials within the decimal system, from the Pachacuti, leader of 100 households, upwards, had judicial responsibilities. The Tukui Rikuk, imperial inspectors, also played a crucial role, investigating grievances and ensuring that local officials adhered to imperial standards of justice. Ultimately, the Sapa Inca held the supreme judicial authority, and major cases or appeals could theoretically reach his court for final arbitration, though this was rare. Inca law distinguished between offences against the state and offences against individuals. Crimes against the state, such as rebellion, treason, or serious insubordination, were considered the most severe. Other serious offences included murder, rape, and extensive theft. The severity of punishment often depended on the nature of the crime, the social status of the offender, and whether the offence was a first-time transgression or a repeat violation. Punishments varied considerably. For minor infractions, penalties might include public reprimand, forced labour for the state, or restitution to the wronged party. More serious crimes, particularly those against the state or involving significant property theft, could result in harsh penalties. These included physical punishments, mutilation, or, for the most egregious offences, execution. Methods of execution included hanging, stoning, or being thrown from a cliff. Rebellious populations might face collective punishment, such as forced resettlement, mitmark, to distant parts of the empire, disrupting their social cohesion and preventing future uprisings. The emphasis on collective responsibility within the Ailu also meant that an individual's actions could sometimes have repercussions for their entire community. This fostered a strong sense of social control and mutual surveillance, as communities had a vested interest in preventing their members from committing crimes that could lead to collective penalties. The efficiency of the Inca road network and communication system, particularly the chasquis, allowed for rapid reporting of crimes and the swift apprehension of offenders, further contributing to the maintenance of order across the vast and diverse empire. This strict but organized legal framework was a key component of the Inca's ability to govern and integrate millions of subjects. While the Inca famously lacked a phonetic written script, their empire possessed sophisticated and highly organized methods for education and the transmission of knowledge. This system was meticulously structured to serve the needs of a complex centralized state, ensuring the perpetuation of imperial ideology, administrative practices, and specialized skills across Tahuantinsuyu. Formal education was primarily reserved for the sons of the Inca nobility and the curacas, local chiefs, from conquered provinces. These young men attended the Yachay Huasi, or House of Learning, located in Cusco. Instruction within the Yache Huasi lasted approximately 4 years and was provided by amortas, or wise men, who were highly respected scholars and teachers. The curriculum was comprehensive, designed to prepare future administrators, military leaders, and religious officials for their roles in governing the empire. Subjects included the Quechua language, which was promoted as the lingua franca of the empire, Inca history, religious doctrines, the principles of Inca law and justice, and the intricate art of quipu record-keeping. Mastery of the quipu was essential for managing the empire's vast resources and population data. Students also received training in military strategy, state rituals, and the etiquette of the imperial court, ensuring their proficiency in both practical governance and ceremonial duties. For the vast majority of the population, commoners received practical, vocational training within their ayllus kin groups and local communities. This informal education was highly effective, transmitting essential skills through observation, apprenticeship, and direct participation in daily activities. Boys learned agricultural techniques from their fathers, including terracing, irrigation, crop rotation, and animal husbandry, vital for the empire's economic sustenance. They also acquired skills in construction, road maintenance, and basic military training, preparing them for their mita labor obligations and potential military service. Girls were taught domestic skills by their mothers, including cooking, child rearing, and, most importantly, weaving. Textile production was a fundamental economic and artistic activity, and girls learned to spin fibers, dye threads, and weave intricate patterns, contributing to their household's economic output and the state's textile demands. Oral traditions formed the bedrock of Inca knowledge transmission, serving as the primary means of preserving history, laws, religious beliefs, and cultural narratives. Highly trained individuals, often quipu or specialized oral historians, memorized vast amounts of information, including dynastic histories, heroic deeds, and the complex genealogies of the Sapa Incas. These oral histories were recited during public ceremonies and passed down through generations, ensuring the continuity of imperial memory. Laws and decrees were likewise transmitted orally throughout the empire by imperial officials and chasquis, relay runners, ensuring that all subjects were aware of state mandates. Religious beliefs, myths, and ritual practices were also conveyed through oral narratives, songs, and ceremonial reenactments, reinforcing the Inca cosmology and the cult of the sun. The absence of a phonetic writing system did not impede the Incas' ability to manage a sophisticated empire. Instead, they developed highly effective alternative methods, including the quipu for quantitative data and the robust oral tradition for qualitative information. This dual system, coupled with specialized formal education for the elite and practical training for commoners, ensured that knowledge was transmitted efficiently and effectively, supporting the administrative, economic, and ideological coherence of Tawantinsuyu. Inca society was rigidly stratified, forming a hierarchical structure designed to maintain order, allocate labor, and manage resources across the vast Tawantinsuyu. This social organization was meticulously defined, with each group possessing distinct roles, responsibilities, and privileges, all ultimately subservient to the central authority of the Sapa Inca. At the apex of this social pyramid was the Sapa Inca, the supreme ruler and absolute authority of the empire. Considered a living deity, the son of the sun god Inti, his divine lineage provided the ultimate legitimization for his rule. The Sapa Inca held ultimate control over all land, resources, and people within the empire. His decisions were law, and his person was sacred, embodying the unity and power of the Inca state. He presided over all major religious ceremonies, military campaigns, and administrative functions, acting as the primary intermediary between the human and divine realms. Immediately below the Sapa Inca was the royal family and a privileged noble class, often referred to by the Spanish as orejones, big ears, due to their practice of wearing large ear spools. This group consisted of individuals of Inca lineage, particularly those from the royal Panacas, kin groups descended from previous Sapa Incas. They held the most important administrative, military, and religious positions throughout the empire. Orejones served as governors of the Suyus, quarters, commanders of armies, high priests, and imperial inspectors, tuku rikuk. They enjoyed significant privileges, including exemption from manual labor, access to fine goods, and specialized education in the Yachaywasi. Their roles were critical in extending and maintaining imperial control, acting as direct representatives of the Sapa Inca. Below the imperial nobility were the curacas, the hereditary local chiefs of conquered ethnic groups. When a territory was incorporated into the Inca Empire, the existing curacas were often allowed to retain their positions, provided they pledged loyalty to the Sapa Inca and facilitated the implementation of Inca policies. They served as vital intermediaries, responsible for organizing their Ayllus kin groups to fulfill Mita labor obligations, collect tribute, and administer local justice. Their children were sometimes sent to Cusco for education, ensuring their indoctrination into Inca ideology and fostering loyalty to the imperial center. This pragmatic integration of local leadership was key to minimizing resistance and efficiently managing diverse populations. The vast majority of the population comprised the Hatunruna, or commoners. These individuals were organized into Ayllus and formed the backbone of the Inca economy. Their primary responsibilities included agricultural production, contributing labor to the mita system for state projects such as road building, terracing, and construction, and providing military service when required. Hatunruna lived in self-sufficient communities, working communal lands as well as plots allocated for their families. Their lives were meticulously regulated by the state, which oversaw their marriages, production quotas, and labor assignments, ensuring the efficient functioning of the empire's labor-based economy. At the lowest tier of the social hierarchy were the Yanakuna, a unique class of specialized servants or retainers. Unlike the Hatunruna, Yanakuna were detached from their Ailu ties and served the Sapa Inca, the imperial nobility, or state institutions directly. Their status was hereditary, and they performed various specialized tasks, including administrative duties, craftsmanship, military service, and domestic labor. While they lacked the traditional communal support of the Ailu, their direct service to the elite often provided them with a degree of social mobility and access to resources not available to commoners. This rigid yet functional social hierarchy allowed the Inca state to organize and control millions of subjects across a vast empire, ensuring the efficient extraction and redistribution of resources necessary for its operation and expansion. Family and kinship formed the bedrock of Inca social structure, deeply influencing daily life, economic organization, and political stability. The Ailu, a fundamental Andean unit, served as the primary framework for family and community, emphasizing collective responsibility and shared lineage. Marriage customs were meticulously regulated, reflecting the hierarchical nature of Inca society and the importance of orderly reproduction for labor allocation. Marriage in Inca society was primarily a pragmatic arrangement, often organized by the Ailu or state officials, rather than solely based on individual romantic choice. For commoners, Hatunruna, marriages typically occurred at a relatively young age, often between 18 and 20 for women and 20 to 25 for men. These unions were usually endogamous within the Ailu or a closely related community, reinforcing kinship ties and maintaining local social cohesion. The formalization of marriage often involved a simple ceremony where the couple publicly acknowledged their union, sometimes with the presence of a local curaca, chief, or imperial official. The state encouraged marriage as it ensured the formation of new households, which were the basic units for mita labor obligations and resource production. Unmarried individuals were often viewed as incomplete and were not fully integrated into the Ailu's economic and social fabric. Polygyny, the practice of a man having multiple wives, was permitted and practiced among the Inca elite, particularly the Sapa Inca and the nobility. This was a clear marker of social status and wealth. The Sapa Inca typically had a principal wife, the Koya, who was often his full sister, a practice intended to maintain the purity of the royal lineage and concentrate divine power. Additionally, the Sapa Inca and high-ranking nobles would take numerous secondary wives, often from conquered provinces. These strategic marriages served political purposes, forging alliances with local curacas and integrating newly incorporated territories into the imperial structure. The children of these secondary wives also played roles in imperial administration, further binding the empire together through kinship networks. The Ailu was central to family life. It provided the social and economic support system for its members. Within the Ailu, families received usufruct rights to land, which they worked collectively and individually. Reciprocal labor, known as aini, was a core principle, where families assisted each other with agricultural tasks, house building, and other communal projects. This ensured that no family was left without support, reinforcing community bonds. The Ailu also served as the unit through which the state levied its mita labor demands, with the community collectively organizing its members to fulfill these obligations. Gender roles within the Inca household and broader community were distinct yet complementary. Men were primarily responsible for heavy agricultural labor, construction, military service, and hunting. They also held most formal political and religious leadership positions. Women were responsible for domestic duties, including cooking, child rearing, and the crucial task of weaving textiles. Weaving was not merely a household chore but a highly valued economic and artistic activity, with women producing the vast majority of the empire's textiles for both family use and state tribute. Women also participated in agricultural tasks, particularly planting and harvesting, and held important roles in local religious practices. While formal power structures were male-dominated, women held significant influence within the household and community, and their economic contributions were indispensable to the Inca system. This structured approach to marriage and family life ensured social stability and the efficient functioning of the Inca Empire's labor-based economy. The Inca civilization possessed a remarkable and sophisticated understanding of health and medicine, integrating empirical knowledge with spiritual beliefs to maintain public well-being across their vast empire. Their medical practices were rooted in a deep knowledge of the natural environment and a hierarchical system of healers. A cornerstone of Inca medicine was their extensive knowledge of medicinal plants. Andean flora provided a rich pharmacopoeia, and Inca healers utilized a wide variety of herbs, roots, and barks for their therapeutic properties. Coca leaves, for instance, were widely used not only in rituals but also for their analgesic properties to alleviate pain, reduce fatigue, and suppress hunger, particularly at high altitudes. Quinine, derived from the bark of the cinchona tree, was employed to treat fevers, including those associated with malaria, a significant health challenge in some lowland regions. Other plants were used as anti-inflammatories, antiseptics, diuretics, or for their psychotropic effects in ceremonial contexts. This botanical knowledge was accumulated over centuries and transmitted through oral tradition and practical apprenticeship within healing lineages. Inca surgeons demonstrated advanced skills, particularly in the practice of trepanation, a surgical procedure involving the drilling or scraping of a hole into the human skull. Archaeological evidence, primarily from skeletal remains, showing clear signs of bone regeneration, indicates that this procedure was performed with a high success rate, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of anatomy and infection control. Trepanation was likely performed to treat head injuries, relieve intracranial pressure, or address neurological disorders. Surgeons utilized obsidian knives, bronze scalpels, and drills, and evidence suggests the use of anesthetics, possibly derived from coca or chicha, maize beer, and antiseptics, such as plant resins, to prevent infection. The precision of the cranial perforations and the high survival rates underscore the technical proficiency of Inca medical practitioners. The maintenance of public health and well-being was also a significant concern for the Inca state. The extensive road network, Capac Ñan, and the system of quilquas, storehouses, were crucial for ensuring food security and preventing widespread famine, a major contributor to disease. The Inca also implemented sophisticated sanitation practices in their urban centers, including drainage systems and waste management, which helped mitigate the spread of illness. Medical practitioners in Inca society encompassed various roles. Hampi Kamayoks were general healers who treated illnesses using herbal remedies and minor surgical procedures. Circa Kuna specialized in surgery, particularly the treatment of fractures and dislocations. Maxa were diviners and shamans who diagnosed illnesses, often attributing them to spiritual causes or imbalances, and performed rituals to restore health. These healers were highly respected members of society, and their practices often combined empirical observation with spiritual interventions, reflecting the holistic worldview of the Inca. The Incas' practical medical knowledge, combined with their organized approach to public health, allowed them to effectively manage disease and injury within their empire. The Inca were keen and systematic observers of the celestial bodies, integrating sophisticated astronomical knowledge into their religion, agricultural practices, and daily life. This profound understanding of the cosmos was fundamental to their worldview and provided the framework for their calendar systems, which were essential for managing the empire's vast agricultural output and its complex ritual cycles. The Inca primarily utilized two interconnected calendar systems, a solar calendar and a lunar calendar. The solar calendar, known as the Inti Raymi calendar, was based on the annual cycle of the sun and comprised 365 days divided into 12 months of 30 days each, with an additional 5 intercalary days. This calendar was crucial for agricultural planning, dictating the timing of planting, harvesting, and fallow periods across the diverse ecological zones of the empire. Astronomical observations of the solstices and equinoxes were key to maintaining the accuracy of this calendar. The June solstice, marking the shortest day in the southern hemisphere, was particularly significant, celebrated with the major state festival of Inti Raymi, dedicated to the sun god. The lunar calendar, consisting of 12 lunar months of approximately 29 or 30 days, was used to organize religious festivals and ritual cycles. Each lunar month had specific ceremonies and offerings associated with it, often linked to agricultural activities or the veneration of various deities. The Inca reconciled the discrepancies between the solar and lunar cycles through various observational methods and adjustments, ensuring that their ritual calendar remained synchronized with the agricultural year. Inca observations of the sun were paramount. They meticulously tracked the sun's path across the sky throughout the year. This was achieved through various architectural features and specialized observation points. In Cusco, the Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun, was precisely aligned to capture the sun's rays at specific times of the year, particularly during the solstices. Pillars, or towers known as sucancas, were erected on the horizon surrounding Cusco and other important centers. These served as markers, allowing observers to pinpoint the exact rising and setting points of the sun on significant dates, thereby confirming the solstices and equinoxes for calendrical purposes. The Intihuatana, or hitching post of the sun, found at sites like Machu Picchu, also functioned as astronomical indicators, allowing priests to hitch the sun's path, symbolizing their control over time and natural cycles. Beyond the sun and moon, the Inca also observed stars and constellations. They recognized both classical constellations and dark constellations, which were formed by the dark patches between the stars in the Milky Way. These dark constellations, often depicting animals like the llama or fox, held significant religious and agricultural meaning. The Pleiades star cluster, known as the Kulka storehouse, was particularly important for predicting rainfall and agricultural success, as its appearance and disappearance in the night sky correlated with seasonal changes. The integration of astronomical knowledge with architecture was a defining characteristic of Inca planning. Many important Inca structures, including temples, palaces, and agricultural complexes, were intentionally aligned with celestial events. These alignments were not merely symbolic but served practical purposes, guiding agricultural activities, timing religious ceremonies, and reinforcing the Sapa Inca's divine connection to the cosmos. The Incas' sophisticated understanding of astronomy and their precise calendar systems were indispensable tools for managing their vast empire, demonstrating their advanced intellectual capabilities in a pre-scientific era. Music, dance, and elaborate festivals constituted vital components of Inca cultural and religious life, serving not only as expressions of artistic creativity, but also as crucial mechanisms for reinforcing social cohesion, political authority, and religious devotion across the vast Tahuantinsuyu. These public spectacles were meticulously organized by the state, integrating diverse local traditions into a unified imperial calendar. Inca music employed a variety of instruments, primarily wind and percussion. Flutes were ubiquitous, crafted from materials such as bone, cane, clay, and even precious metals. The quina, a notched flute, and the pinkilu, a vertical duct flute, were common melodic instruments. Panpipes, known as siku or antara, composed of multiple reeds of varying lengths bound together, were played in ensembles, often with musicians playing complementary halves of a melody, emphasizing the Andean principle of duality and reciprocity. Trumpets, fashioned from conch shells, pututu, ceramic, or metal, produced loud, resonant sounds used for signaling and ceremonial purposes. Percussion instruments included drums, huancara and tinya, made from animal hides stretched over wooden frames, and rattles, providing rhythmic foundations for dances and rituals. The absence of stringed instruments, as known in the Old World, is a notable characteristic of pre-Columbian Andean music. Dance was inextricably linked with music and played a central role in all Inca festivals and ceremonies. Dances were often communal, involving large groups of participants, and varied in style depending on the occasion and region. Some dances were highly ritualized, performed by priests or specific social groups to honor deities or commemorate historical events. Others were more celebratory, involving energetic movements and elaborate costumes. The movements often mimicked animals, agricultural activities, or military actions, reflecting the close relationship between Inca life and the natural and social world. Costumes, often made from finely woven textiles and adorned with feathers, shells, and metal ornaments, were integral to the visual spectacle and symbolic meaning of the dances. Festivals punctuated the Inca year, closely tied to the agricultural cycle and the movements of celestial bodies. These annual celebrations were not merely holidays but state-sponsored events designed to reaffirm imperial ideology and the Sapa Inca's divine authority. The most significant of these was Inti Raymi, the Festival of the Sun, celebrated during the June solstice, the shortest day in the southern hemisphere. This grand ceremony, held in Cusco, involved the Sapa Inca, the imperial nobility, and thousands of participants from across the empire. Rituals included processions, animal sacrifices, primarily llamas, and elaborate dances, all aimed at honoring Inti, the sun god, and ensuring the sun's return and continued agricultural fertility for the coming year. Other important festivals included Capac Ñan, celebrated during the December solstice, marking the start of the agricultural season and rites of passage for young men, and Aymaray, a harvest festival. These festivals served critical social and political functions. They provided opportunities for the Sapa Inca to display his power and generosity, distributing food and chicha to the populace. They fostered a sense of shared identity and collective participation among diverse ethnic groups, reinforcing their allegiance to the Inca state. The communal feasting, music, and dance during these events also served as mechanisms for social bonding and the reinforcement of reciprocal relationships, essential for maintaining order and stability across the vast and complex Inca Empire. Despite the absence of a phonetic written script, the Inca Empire possessed a sophisticated and highly effective system of oral traditions that meticulously preserved its history, myths, laws, and extensive body of knowledge. This reliance on spoken word and mnemonic devices was fundamental to the transmission of cultural heritage across generations and throughout the vast Tahuantinsuyu. The preservation of Inca history was a paramount concern for the state. Dynastic histories, including the reigns and achievements of each Sapa Inca, major military campaigns, and significant administrative decisions, were memorized and recited by specialized individuals. These professional oral historians, often associated with the royal Panakas king groups, underwent rigorous training to ensure the accurate transmission of these complex narratives. Their recitations were not merely entertainment but served as official records, reinforcing the legitimacy of the ruling lineage and providing a historical framework for imperial ideology. These historical accounts, later recorded by Spanish chroniclers, form the primary basis of our understanding of Inca dynastic succession and imperial expansion. Myths and religious beliefs were also transmitted through a rich tapestry of oral narratives. Creation myths, such as those of Viracocha and Inti, and origin stories like that of Manco Capac, were central to Inca cosmology and were recounted during religious ceremonies and daily life. These narratives explained the natural world, the relationship between humans and deities, and the sacred origins of the Inca people. Priests and religious specialists were responsible for memorizing and performing these sacred texts, ensuring their continuity and proper ritual context. The oral transmission of these myths instilled a shared spiritual understanding among diverse populations, contributing to imperial cohesion. Beyond history and religion, Practical knowledge, laws, and administrative procedures were also conveyed orally. The principles of Inca law, including the core tenets of Amakilla, Amalula, and Amashua, were taught and reinforced through verbal instruction and public pronouncements. Imperial decrees and administrative directives were disseminated throughout the empire by chasquis, relay runners, and local officials who would orally relay the information to the curakas, local chiefs, and, subsequently, to the Ailu, kin group, members. This ensured that all subjects were aware of their obligations and the state's expectations. The quipu, while primarily a quantitative record-keeping device, likely played a crucial role as a mnemonic aid for these oral traditions. While not a phonetic script, the arrangement, color, and knot types of quipus could have served as prompts for quipu kamayoks to recall specific historical events, census data, or legal precedents during their recitations. This symbiotic relationship between the physical quipu and the oral narrative allowed for the storage and retrieval of vast amounts of complex information. The methods of transmission were highly structured. Children learned foundational myths and social norms from elders within their ailus. Formal education in the Yachewasi for noble sons involved intensive memorization and recitation of historical and religious texts. Public ceremonies and festivals served as important venues for collective remembrance and the reinforcement of imperial narratives through songs, dances, and dramatic reenactments. The continuous practice of these oral traditions, supported by specialized roles and mnemonic tools, ensured the profound continuity of Inca knowledge and cultural identity across generations, even in the absence of a written language. The upbringing of Inca children was a structured and systematic process, meticulously designed to integrate them into the rigid social hierarchy and prepare them for their specific roles within Tahuantinsuyu. This involved distinct customs from infancy through adolescence, emphasizing the acquisition of practical skills and communal responsibilities. From birth, Inca children were subjected to practices intended to shape their physical and mental development. Infants were often swaddled tightly and placed in a cuna, cradle board, a practice believed to promote a strong, straight back and a calm demeanor. This also allowed mothers to carry their infants while performing daily tasks. Breastfeeding was prolonged, often continuing for up to 2 years, fostering a strong bond between mother and child. Early childhood was characterized by a focus on physical development and discipline. Children were encouraged to endure hardship and discomfort, a preparation for the rigorous demands of adult life in the Andean environment. As children grew, their education became increasingly practical and gender-specific, primarily occurring within the Ailu kin group and household. Formal schooling, such as that provided in the Yachewasi, was exclusively for the sons of the nobility. For commoners, Hatun Runa, learning was experiential. Boys were trained by their fathers and other male relatives in agricultural techniques, including the cultivation of various crops like potatoes and maize, terracing, and irrigation maintenance. They learned animal husbandry, caring for llamas and alpacas, and acquired skills in hunting, fishing, and basic construction. These practical skills were essential for their future contributions to the Ailu's subsistence and their mita labor obligations to the state. Military training, including proficiency with slings and other weapons, also began at a young age, preparing boys for potential service in the Inca army. Girls, conversely, were primarily educated by their mothers and female relatives in domestic skills. This included cooking, food preservation, and child rearing. Most significantly, girls were taught the intricate art of weaving from a very young age. Textile production was a cornerstone of the Inca economy and culture, and women were responsible for creating a vast array of fabrics for family use, tribute, and ceremonial purposes. Girls learned to spin fibers, dye threads using natural pigments, and operate backstrap looms to produce various types of cloth. This skill was not merely domestic but an economic necessity, as textiles were a form of wealth and tribute. The transition from childhood to adulthood was marked by elaborate coming-of-age rituals, which varied slightly between social classes, but served to formally integrate individuals into their adult roles. For commoner boys, this typically occurred around the age of 14. The Huarachiqui festival was the most significant coming-of-age ceremony for noble boys in Cusco. This rigorous ritual involved a series of physical and mental tests, including foot races, mock battles, and endurance challenges, designed to demonstrate courage, strength, and discipline. Successful completion of the Huarachiqui conferred the right to wear the huara, loincloth, symbolizing manhood, and to have their ears pierced for the insertion of ear spools, a privilege of the Inca nobility. This ritual was crucial for legitimizing their status and preparing them for leadership roles. For girls, a coming-of-age ceremony, often called quipu, typically occurred around the time of their first menstruation. This ritual marked their transition into womanhood and their readiness for marriage and childbearing. It involved a period of fasting and seclusion, followed by a ceremonial bath, the donning of new clothes, and a feast with family and community members. This emphasized their new responsibilities within the household and the Ailu. These rituals, regardless of social status, formally recognized the individual's new responsibilities and their full integration into the social and economic fabric of Inca society, ensuring the perpetuation of the empire's labor-based system. The Inca developed a remarkably diverse and nutritious diet, meticulously adapted to the varied ecological zones of their vast empire. Their culinary traditions were deeply intertwined with their sophisticated agricultural practices and efficient food management systems, ensuring the sustenance of millions across Tahuantinsuyu. The cornerstone of the Inca diet was the potato, a crop that originated in the Andes and was cultivated in thousands of varieties, adapted to different altitudes and climates. Potatoes provided a reliable and abundant source of carbohydrates and nutrients, forming the staple food for the majority of the population, particularly in the highlands. Alongside potatoes, other tubers such as oca, aluco, and mashua were also widely cultivated and consumed. Maize, or corn, was another vital crop, especially important for the Inca elite and for ceremonial purposes. It was grown in warmer valleys and on terraced fields, often requiring extensive irrigation. Maize was consumed in various forms, including ground into flour for bread-like products and, most significantly, fermented into chicha, a maize beer that was a ubiquitous beverage in daily life and central to all Inca rituals and festivals. Quinoa, a highly nutritious grain, was also a significant component of the Inca diet, valued for its protein content and adaptability to high altitudes. Beans, squash, chili peppers, and various fruits and vegetables native to the Andean and coastal regions supplemented these staples, contributing to a balanced diet. On the coast, fish and seafood were primary protein sources, while in the highlands, guinea pigs, kwai, llamas, and alpacas provided meat. Llamas and alpacas were primarily valued for their wool and as beasts of burden, but their meat was consumed, especially during festivals or by the elite. Hunting provided additional protein from deer, vicuñas, and various birds. The Inca developed highly effective methods of food preservation, crucial for managing surplus production and ensuring food security throughout the year, particularly during periods of scarcity or for military provisioning. One of the most important preservation techniques was the production of chuño, freeze-dried potatoes. This involved exposing potatoes to the freezing night temperatures and the warm daytime sun, then trampling them to remove moisture. The resulting chuño was lightweight, highly durable, and could be stored for years without spoilage, making it an ideal staple for state storehouses, qualcars, and military campaigns. Similarly, meat was preserved by sun-drying it into charqui, jerky, a term from which the English word is derived. These preservation methods allowed for the accumulation of vast food reserves, which were essential for supporting the large Mita labor force, provisioning the army, and providing famine relief to affected regions. Culinary traditions varied regionally, reflecting the diverse agricultural outputs of different ecological zones. Food was typically prepared by boiling, roasting, or stewing, often with the addition of chili peppers and herbs for flavor. Communal meals were common, particularly during festivals and state-sponsored events, where large quantities of food and chicha were distributed to the populace, reinforcing social bonds and imperial generosity. The efficient production, preservation, and distribution of a diverse range of crops and protein sources underpinned the demographic stability and economic prosperity of the Inca Empire. The reign of Huayna Capac, which had seen the Inca Empire reach its territorial zenith, concluded with an unforeseen and catastrophic event: his death from a European disease, likely smallpox, around 1527 CE. This devastating epidemic, introduced to the Americas by European contact and spreading through indigenous trade networks even before the arrival of Francisco Pizarro in the Inca heartland, plunged Tawantinsuyu into an unprecedented and fatal succession crisis. Huayna Capac had been campaigning in the northern reaches of his empire, consolidating control over newly conquered territories in what is now Ecuador and southern Colombia, when the disease struck. The swift and widespread nature of the epidemic was a critical factor in the ensuing turmoil. Inca society had no prior immunity to these old-world diseases, leading to high mortality rates that decimated populations, including significant portions of the nobility and administrative class. The disease not only claimed Huayna Capac, but also his designated heir, Ninan Cuyochi, who died shortly after his father, before he could be formally invested as Sapa Inca. This double tragedy was a profound blow to the highly centralized Inca state, which relied on a clear and divinely sanctioned line of succession. The absence of a clear and undisputed successor immediately triggered a political vacuum and intense rivalry among Huayna Capac's surviving sons. While Inca tradition favored primogeniture, the Sapa Inca also had the prerogative to choose his most capable son as heir, often from a favored secondary wife. Huayna Capac had numerous sons, but two emerged as the primary contenders for the throne: Huascar, based in Cusco, and Atahualpa, who had been campaigning with his father in the north and had established a strong power base there. Huascar, born in Cusco and considered by many of the traditional nobility to be the legitimate heir, quickly asserted his claim to the throne. He held the support of the established imperial bureaucracy and the powerful Panacas, royal kin groups, in the capital. His legitimacy was rooted in his birth in the sacred city and his connection to the traditional power structures of the empire. Atahualpa, on the other hand, had spent much of his life in the northern provinces with his father, developing strong ties with the military and the northern nobility. He was a skilled military commander and had cultivated a loyal following among the seasoned troops who had campaigned with Huayna Capac. While initially acknowledging Huascar's claim, tensions rapidly escalated as both brothers sought to consolidate their power and influence. The immediate political turmoil manifested in a series of diplomatic maneuvers, accusations, and skirmishes, quickly escalating into open civil war. The traditional mechanisms for resolving succession disputes, which typically involved a council of high-ranking nobles and priests, failed to produce a consensus amidst the unprecedented circumstances of the epidemic and the strong regional power bases of the two contenders. The death of the Sapa Inca from a mysterious, devastating illness, combined with the lack of a clear successor, created a crisis of legitimacy that undermined the very foundations of the Inca state. This internal conflict, fueled by personal ambition and regional loyalties, would fatally weaken the empire just as the Spanish conquistadors were making their first incursions into Inca territory, setting the stage for Tawantinsuyu's dramatic collapse. The death of Huayna Capac and his designated heir, Ninan Cuyochi, from a devastating European epidemic around 1527 CE, plunged the Inca Empire into a brutal civil war between two of his surviving sons, Huascar and Atahualpa. This conflict, lasting approximately 5 years, fatally weakened Tawantinsuyu just as the Spanish conquistadors were making their initial incursions into the Andean region. Huascar, based in Cusco, was generally considered the legitimate heir by the traditional Inca nobility and the powerful Panacas, royal kin groups, in the capital. His claim was rooted in his birth in Cusco and his connection to the established imperial bureaucracy. He quickly asserted his authority, demanding recognition from all provincial governors and military commanders. His support base was strong in the southern and central parts of the empire, particularly among the traditional elite who adhered to the established lines of succession. Atahualpa, on the other hand, had spent considerable time in the northern provinces with his father, Huayna Capac, during the latter's campaigns to consolidate control in Ecuador. This prolonged presence allowed Atahualpa to cultivate strong relationships with the seasoned military commanders and troops stationed in the north, as well as with the northern nobility. His power base was primarily military, centered in Quito, and he commanded a highly effective and loyal army, led by experienced generals such as Quizquiz and Chalcuchima. The civil war began with escalating tensions, diplomatic maneuvers, and minor skirmishes, which rapidly escalated into full-scale military confrontation. Huáscar initially attempted to assert his authority over Atahualpa, demanding his submission. Atahualpa, while initially feigning compliance, soon mobilized his northern forces, leading to the first major engagements. Key military campaigns unfolded across the empire. Atahualpa's generals, Quizquiz and Chalcuchima, proved to be highly effective military strategists. They systematically advanced southward, engaging Huáscar's forces in a series of decisive battles. Notable engagements included the Battle of Chimborazo and the Battle of Quipaipan in what is now Ecuador. Atahualpa's forces, composed of veteran troops from the northern campaigns, often demonstrated superior tactical execution and discipline compared to Huáscar's armies, which were sometimes hastily assembled from conscripted commoners. The conflict was marked by significant betrayals and shifting alliances among regional curacas, local chiefs, and ethnic groups. Some groups, long resentful of Inca rule, sided with whichever brother offered more favorable terms or seemed poised for victory. The Mitmac system, which had forcibly resettled populations, also created underlying tensions that were exploited by both sides. Atahualpa's forces, in particular, were noted for their ruthless efficiency, often employing scorched earth tactics and severely punishing populations that resisted them or sided with Huáscar. The war culminated in a decisive victory for Atahualpa's forces near Cusco. In the Battle of Quipaipan, Huáscar's army was decisively defeated and Huáscar himself was captured. Atahualpa's generals then marched on Cusco, securing the capital. This victory effectively ended the civil war, leaving Atahualpa as the undisputed, though not yet formally crowned, Sapa Inca. The devastating consequences of this conflict were profound. It resulted in immense loss of life, severe disruption of agricultural production, and the destruction of significant infrastructure, including parts of Cusco. More critically, the civil war deeply divided the Inca nobility and populace, eroding the empire's internal cohesion and legitimacy. This internal fragmentation and the exhaustion of its military resources left Tahuantinsuyu critically vulnerable, just as Francisco Pizarro and his small contingent of Spanish conquistadors arrived on the Pacific coast, poised to exploit the empire's weakened state. The fateful arrival of Francisco Pizarro and his small band of Spanish conquistadors in 1532 CE marked the beginning of the end for the Inca Empire to Tahuantinsuyu. This pivotal moment was the culmination of Pizarro's persistent efforts to explore and conquer the South American continent, driven by motivations common to many European adventurers of the era: the pursuit of gold, glory, and the expansion of the Spanish crown's dominion. Francisco Pizarro was born in Trujillo, Extremadura, Spain, around 1478. His early life was characterized by limited opportunities and a lack of formal education. He participated in various expeditions in the New World, including those of Alonso de Ojeda and Vasco Núñez de Balboa, where he gained experience in exploration and military leadership. Pizarro was present when Balboa first sighted the Pacific Ocean in 1513, an event that fueled his ambition to discover and conquer the rumored wealthy lands to the south. After establishing himself in Panama, Pizarro formed a partnership with Diego de Almagro, a soldier, and Hernando de Luque, a priest, to fund and organize expeditions to the unknown southern territories. Their initial two expeditions in 1524 and 1526 were largely unsuccessful, encountering harsh environments, hostile indigenous groups, and limited evidence of the vast riches they sought. Despite these setbacks, Pizarro obtained compelling evidence of a highly advanced and wealthy civilization further south, including golden ornaments and finely woven textiles. This crucial intelligence prompted him to return to Spain in 1528 to seek direct royal authorization for a third, larger expedition. In 1529, Pizarro secured the Capitulación de Toledo from Queen Isabella I of Castile. This royal decree granted him extensive authority to conquer and govern the territory from the Santiago River in modern Ecuador southward, designating him governor and captain general of New Castile. This official sanction provided the necessary legal and financial backing for his ambitious undertaking. Pizarro's third and final expedition departed Panama in 1531 with a relatively small force, numbering approximately 180 men and 27 horses. This contingent, though numerically small, possessed significant technological advantages over indigenous forces, including steel weaponry, firearms, arquebuses and cannons, and cavalry. After landing on the coast of present-day Ecuador, Pizarro's forces began their arduous journey southward. They encountered evidence of the devastating European epidemic, likely smallpox, that had swept through the Inca Empire, claiming the lives of Sapa Inca Huayna Capac and his designated heir. In September 1532, Pizarro led his forces from the coastal lowlands into the Andean highlands, aiming for Cajamarca. This strategic move was based on intelligence that the Inca Emperor Atahualpa, having recently triumphed in the civil war against his brother Huasca, was encamped there with a large portion of his victorious army. Pizarro's decision to march inland, despite the numerical disparity, was a calculated risk that ultimately led to the fateful encounter that would irrevocably alter the course of Inca history. The Spanish approach to Cajamarca marked the direct confrontation between two vastly different civilizations. The meeting at Cajamarca on November 16, 1532 CE, stands as a pivotal moment in world history, fundamentally altering the balance of power between the Spanish conquistadors and the Inca Empire. Francisco Pizarro, having marched his small force into the Andean highlands, found the Inca Emperor Atahualpa encamped near the city with a substantial portion of his victorious army, celebrating his recent triumph in the civil war against his brother Huasca. Pizarro's strategic position was precarious. His force consisted of approximately 168 men, including 62 cavalry, while Atahualpa commanded tens of thousands of veteran Inca warriors. Recognizing this immense numerical disparity, Pizarro devised a plan rooted in audacious deception and reliance on Spanish technological superiority. He positioned his men, horses, and two small cannons within the buildings surrounding Cajamarca's main plaza, concealing them from view. Pizarro then sent an invitation to Atahualpa, requesting a meeting in the plaza. Atahualpa, confident in his overwhelming numerical superiority and perhaps underestimating the Spanish, accepted. On the appointed day, Atahualpa entered the plaza with a grand procession, accompanied by thousands of unarmed retainers, nobles, and musicians. He was carried on a royal litter, adorned with golden feathers, symbolizing his immense authority. Crucially, his retinue was unarmed, as it was customary for Inca rulers to appear in such settings without weapons, relying on their divine status and the sheer presence of their entourage. Upon Atahualpa's arrival in the plaza, the Spanish friar Vicente de Valverde approached him, accompanied by an interpreter. Valverde presented Atahualpa with a breviary, a Bible, and delivered the requerimiento, a formal demand for the Inca to accept Christianity and the sovereignty of the Spanish crown. Atahualpa, unable to comprehend the theological and legal concepts presented, and reportedly finding no divine power in the book, cast the Bible to the ground. This act, whether a misunderstanding or a deliberate rejection, served as the immediate pretext for the Spanish attack. Upon Valverde's signal, Pizarro's concealed forces launched their ambush. The Spanish cavalry charged into the plaza, their horses, unknown to the Inca, causing immense terror and disruption among the tightly packed, unarmed retinue. Simultaneously, the arquebuses fired, their loud reports and smoke adding to the confusion, while the cannons discharged, causing further panic and casualties. The steel swords and lances of the Spanish infantry proved devastatingly effective against the unarmed Inca, who had no means of defense. Amidst the ensuing chaos, the primary objective was the capture of Atahualpa. Spanish accounts describe the desperate efforts of Atahualpa's loyal retainers to protect him, forming a human shield around his litter. However, the Spanish, led by Pizarro himself, relentlessly pressed their attack. Pizarro personally seized Atahualpa, pulling him from his litter and securing him as a prisoner. The capture of the Sapa Inca was swift and brutal, resulting in thousands of Inca casualties within the plaza, while the Spanish suffered no losses. This single event at Cajamarca fundamentally shifted the balance of power, effectively decapitating the Inca Empire's leadership and paving the way for its eventual conquest. Following his audacious capture at Cajamarca on November 16, 1532 CE, the Inca Emperor Atahualpa, recognizing the Spanish conquistadors' insatiable desire for precious metals, offered an unprecedented ransom for his release. This offer, born of his understanding of Spanish motivations and his own strategic position, initiated an extraordinary outpouring of gold and silver from across the vast Inca Empire, fundamentally altering the Spanish perception of Andean wealth. Atahualpa, held captive in a chamber within Cajamarca, proposed to fill the room he occupied once with gold and twice with silver, up to a specific line he marked on the wall, as high as he could reach. This chamber, approximately 22 feet long and 17 feet wide, represented an immense quantity of precious metals. The offer was a calculated move by Atahualpa to secure his freedom and regain control of his empire, demonstrating his perception of the Spanish as primarily motivated by material gain. Francisco Pizarro, recognizing the immense potential wealth, formally accepted the offer, drawing up a written agreement witnessed by his officers. Upon the agreement, Atahualpa issued orders to his generals and provincial governors throughout Tahuantinsuyu to begin collecting the promised gold and silver. These directives, transmitted via chasquis, relay runners, along the imperial road network, initiated a systematic process of dismantling sacred and ceremonial objects from temples, palaces, and other imperial structures across the empire. Gold and silver, considered the sweat of the sun and tears of the moon respectively, held profound religious and symbolic significance for the Inca, but were not used as currency in their economy. Their primary use was for adornment, ritual objects, and markers of imperial power. Over the ensuing months, a continuous stream of porters arrived in Cajamarca, carrying immense quantities of precious metals. These included finely crafted objects such as ceremonial vessels, intricate figurines, golden and silver plates, and decorative adornments from the Coricancha, Temple of the Sun, in Cusco and other major religious sites. The collection process was slow, as the distances were vast, and the transportation methods relied on human porters and llamas. Spanish chroniclers recorded the astonishment of the conquistadors as they witnessed the arrival of such unprecedented wealth. The Spanish reaction to this influx of gold and silver was one of overwhelming avarice and increasing internal tension. As the ransom accumulated, the conquistadors began to melt down the exquisitely crafted Inca artifacts into standardized ingots for easier division and transport. This act of destruction, driven by the desire for portable wealth, resulted in the irreversible loss of countless pieces of Inca art and historical record. The sheer volume of metal confirmed the rumors of immense riches in Peru, fueling the Spanish crown's interest and attracting more adventurers to the region. The division of the ransom among Pizarro's men and the crown's quinto, royal fifth, was meticulously recorded, with each soldier receiving a share commensurate with his rank and contribution. This distribution, while making many conquistadors wealthy, also exacerbated rivalries and disputes within the Spanish ranks, particularly between Pizarro and his partner Diego de Almagro, setting the stage for future conflicts. The ransom, while fulfilling Atahualpa's promise, ultimately failed to secure his freedom, as events would soon lead to his tragic execution. Despite the immense ransom of gold and silver meticulously collected and delivered by the Inca, Emperor Atahualpa was tragically executed by the Spanish on July 26, 1533 CE, a pivotal event that profoundly impacted the Inca people and their empire. His death, occurring after months of captivity in Cajamarca, was the result of a controversial trial orchestrated by Francisco Pizarro and his co-conspirators. The decision to execute Atahualpa was complex, driven by a confluence of factors within the Spanish camp. Although the ransom chamber was filled, Pizarro and his lieutenants harbored growing anxieties regarding Atahualpa's continued existence. Foremost among these concerns was the fear of an Inca uprising. Rumors, some deliberately fabricated by indigenous rivals of Atahualpa, suggested that the emperor was secretly orchestrating a massive rebellion from his captivity. The Spanish, acutely aware of their numerical inferiority, perceived Atahualpa as a potent symbol around whom such a rebellion could coalesce, particularly with his loyal generals Quizquiz and Chalcuchima still commanding significant forces in the field. Internal divisions within the Spanish ranks also played a role. Diego de Almagro, Pizarro's partner, and his faction were increasingly impatient to move on to Cusco and secure more wealth, viewing Atahualpa's prolonged captivity as an impediment. Furthermore, the arrival of new Spanish contingents, notably those led by Hernando de Soto and Sebastián de Belalcázar, brought fresh anxieties about how the immense ransom would be divided, adding to the pressure to resolve Atahualpa's fate. The formal proceedings against Atahualpa were conducted as a summary trial, lacking due process and based on questionable accusations. A tribunal was convened, presided over by Pizarro. Atahualpa was charged with several offences, including idolatry, polygamy, incest, referring to his marriage to his sister, customary for Inca Sapa Incas, usurping the throne from his brother Huasca, and, crucially, inciting rebellion against the Spanish. The charges of rebellion were particularly convenient for the Spanish, providing a pretext for execution. Atahualpa, lacking understanding of Spanish legal concepts and unable to effectively defend himself through biased interpreters, was found guilty. The sentence was death by burning at the stake, a punishment that was particularly abhorrent to the Inca, who believed that the destruction of the body prevented the soul from entering the afterlife. To avoid this fate, Atahualpa, at the last moment, agreed to be baptized as a Christian, taking the name Francisco. This conversion allowed him to be garroted, strangled with a cord, instead of burned, preserving his body. The immediate impact of Atahualpa's execution on the Inca Empire was profound. It effectively decapitated the centralized leadership of Tahuantinsuyu, plunging the empire into further chaos. While Atahualpa had just won the civil war, his death left a power vacuum at the imperial apex. The traditional mechanisms of succession were shattered, and the remaining Inca nobility were disoriented and fragmented. This allowed the Spanish to exploit existing divisions and install puppet rulers such as Tupac Hualpa and later Manco Inca to legitimize their control. The execution demonstrated the Spanish's ruthless determination to assert dominance, regardless of prior agreements or indigenous sovereignty, and irrevocably set the stage for the full-scale Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire. With the execution of Atahualpa in July 1533 CE, Francisco Pizarro's strategic objective shifted to the capture of Cusco, the sacred capital and political heart of the Inca Empire. The march on Cusco was a critical phase in the Spanish conquest, as securing the imperial center was essential for consolidating their control over Tahuantinsuyu. Pizarro's forces, augmented by indigenous allies, particularly from the Huascaran faction and other groups, long resentful of Inca domination, began their advance southward from Cajamarca. The journey to Cusco was facilitated by the extensive Inca road network, the Capac Ñan, which allowed for relatively rapid movement through the Andean highlands. Along the route, the Spanish encountered various Inca garrisons and local resistance, though these were often fragmented due to the recent civil war and the shock of Atahualpa's death. Pizarro, employing a strategy of exploiting internal divisions, often presented himself as a liberator from Atahualpa's tyranny, gaining the cooperation of some local curicas, chiefs, who had suffered under the northern faction. Before reaching Cusco, Pizarro made a pivotal decision to install a new Sapa Inca. He chose Manco Inca Yupanqui, a half-brother of both Atahualpa and Huasca, who initially collaborated with the Spanish. This appointment was a calculated move by Pizarro to maintain the appearance of legitimate Inca rule, thereby facilitating the Spanish entry into the capital and leveraging existing Inca administrative structures for their own benefit. Manco Inca's perceived legitimacy among some factions of the Inca nobility and populace helped to pacify potential widespread resistance during the initial Spanish occupation of Cusco. The Spanish forces, accompanied by Manco Inca and his retinue, entered Cusco on November 15, 1533 CE. The entry was met with a mixture of awe and apprehension from the Inca populace. Cusco, a city of immense architectural splendor and religious significance, was unlike any urban center the Spanish had previously encountered in the Americas. Its precisely cut stone masonry, grand plazas, and golden temples, particularly the Coricancha, confirmed the accounts of immense wealth that had driven the conquistadors. Upon securing the city, the Spanish immediately initiated a systematic and thorough looting campaign. The Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun, was stripped of its gold and silver adornments, including the magnificent golden garden and the golden sun disk. Palaces of deceased Sapa Incas, which held immense wealth as part of the ancestor cult, were likewise plundered. The vast quantities of precious metals and artifacts accumulated over centuries of Inca rule were melted down into ingots for division among the conquistadors and for the Spanish crown's royal fifth. This act of systematic despoliation resulted in the irreversible destruction of countless irreplaceable Inca artistic and religious objects. The fall of Cusco was a profound symbolic blow to the Inca Empire. It represented the collapse of Tahuantinsuyu's spiritual and political center, the navel of the world. While Inca resistance would continue for decades, the loss of the capital and the capture of its immense wealth severely undermined the Inca state's ability to effectively organize and project power. The Spanish establishment of a new colonial administration in Cusco, alongside the installation of a puppet Inca ruler, marked the formal transition from Inca imperial sovereignty to Spanish colonial domination, irrevocably altering the trajectory of Andean history. The Inca Empire, despite the fall of its capital and the capture of its Sapa Inca, did not surrender easily to Spanish rule. Manco Inca Yupanqui, initially installed as a puppet ruler by Francisco Pizarro in 1534 CE to legitimize Spanish control, soon recognized the true intentions of the conquistadors and launched a massive rebellion in 1536 CE. This uprising represented the most significant attempt by the Inca to expel the invaders and restore their sovereignty. Manco Inca's decision to rebel was precipitated by a series of escalating Spanish abuses and demands. Despite his nominal authority, he was subjected to humiliation, imprisonment, and constant demands for gold and women by Pizarro's brothers, who were left in charge of Cusco. The Spanish disregard for Inca religious practices, including the desecration of sacred sites and the melting of revered artifacts, further alienated Manco Inca and the Inca nobility. Recognizing that his position was untenable and that the Spanish intended complete subjugation, Manco Inca secretly began planning a large-scale uprising. He managed to escape Spanish surveillance in Cusco and, utilizing the surviving imperial administrative networks, rallied a formidable Inca army. Estimates of the forces Manco Inca assembled vary, but they likely numbered in the tens of thousands, possibly exceeding 100 warriors drawn from various ethnic groups across the empire. His strategy was to simultaneously besiege Cusco and Lima, the newly founded Spanish capital on the coast, thereby cutting off Spanish lines of communication and supply. The siege of Cusco commenced in May 1536 CE. Manco Inca's forces surrounded the city, which was defended by a relatively small contingent of Spanish conquistadors, perhaps numbering around 190, along with a significant number of indigenous allies, including Cañari and Chachapoya warriors who had grievances against the Inca. The Inca forces launched sustained assaults on the city, particularly targeting the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, which served as a key Spanish defensive position. The fighting was intense and protracted, marked by fierce hand-to-hand combat. The Inca employed traditional weaponry, including slings, spears, and maces, and utilized their numerical superiority to attempt to overwhelm the Spanish. They also demonstrated tactical adaptability, attempting to use fire arrows against thatched roofs and employing psychological warfare. Despite their overwhelming numbers, Manco Inca's forces faced significant challenges. Spanish steel weaponry, firearms, arquebuses and cannons, and cavalry proved devastatingly effective in close combat and against massed formations. The Spanish also benefited from their indigenous allies, who provided crucial intelligence and fighting support. Furthermore, the need to maintain agricultural cycles to feed such a large army, coupled with the onset of the planting season, necessitated a temporary reduction in the intensity of the siege, allowing the Spanish some respite. The siege of Cusco lasted for approximately 10 months. Ultimately, Spanish reinforcements, arriving from Lima and other parts of the continent, managed to break the Inca encirclement. Recognizing that a direct military victory against the reinforced Spanish was no longer feasible, Manco Inca made a strategic decision to withdraw his forces from Cusco. He retreated to Vilcabamba, a remote and heavily forested region in the eastern Andes, establishing a neo-Inca state. This retreat marked the end of the large-scale, open rebellion but initiated a new phase of Inca resistance, maintaining a sovereign Inca presence for another 3 decades. Following the unsuccessful siege of Cusco in 1536 CE, Manco Inca Yupanqui, recognizing the futility of open warfare against the reinforced Spanish, made a strategic decision to retreat to Vilcabamba. This remote and heavily forested region in the eastern Andes, bordering the Amazonian lowlands, became the last bastion of Inca resistance and the seat of the Neo-Inca state, which maintained a sovereign Inca presence for over 3 decades. Manco Inca established his capital at Vitcos and later at Vilcabamba la Vieja, Old Vilcabamba, strategically chosen for its defensible terrain and isolation. The region's dense jungle, rugged mountains, and challenging climate provided natural protection against Spanish cavalry and firearms, which were less effective in such environments. From this sanctuary, Manco Inca and his successors aimed to preserve Inca traditions, rebuild a semblance of the imperial state, and continue resistance against the Spanish colonial power. Maintaining an independent state in exile presented significant challenges. The Neo-Inca state was geographically isolated, limiting its access to the agricultural heartlands and population centers of the former empire. This restricted its ability to mobilize large armies or accumulate vast resources comparable to those of Tawantinsuyu's peak. The population of Vilcabamba consisted primarily of loyal Inca nobility, military personnel, and their families, along with indigenous groups native to the region who had resisted Spanish incursions. Despite these limitations, Manco Inca and his successors managed to sustain a functioning administration, complete with a court, religious practices, and a military force capable of defensive actions and limited offensive raids. The Neo-Inca state engaged in continuous skirmishes and low-intensity warfare with the Spanish. Manco Inca's forces frequently launched raids from Vilcabamba into Spanish-controlled territories, targeting Spanish patrols, indigenous allies of the Spanish, and supply lines. These raids aimed to disrupt colonial administration, acquire resources, and demonstrate the continued existence of Inca sovereignty. The Spanish, in turn, mounted punitive expeditions into Vilcabamba, but the challenging terrain and the Incas' guerrilla tactics often thwarted their efforts. These intermittent conflicts kept the frontier unstable, and prevented the Spanish from fully consolidating their control over the former Inca heartland. Within Vilcabamba, efforts were made to preserve Inca traditions and cultural practices. The Sapa Inca in exile maintained the rituals of the sun cult, the veneration of ancestors, and the use of the Quechua language. The nobility continued to practice their traditional customs, and the Yachewasi, House of Learning, may have continued in some form to educate future leaders. This cultural preservation was vital for maintaining Inca identity and legitimacy in the face of colonial pressures. Manco Inca also attempted to forge alliances with other indigenous groups who resisted the Spanish, as well as with other European powers, though these efforts largely proved unsuccessful. Manco Inca ruled the Neo-Inca state until his assassination in 1544 CE by a group of Spanish renegades whom he had offered refuge. His death, however, did not end the resistance. 3 of his sons succeeded him: Sayri Tupac, Titu Cusi Yupanqui, and finally Tupac Amaru I, each continuing the struggle from Vilcabamba, a testament to the enduring spirit of Inca resistance against overwhelming odds. The spirit of Inca resistance, sustained in the remote Neo-Inca state of Vilcabamba, culminated with the brief but determined reign of Tupac Amaru I. He was the youngest son of Manco Inca Yupanqui and the last Sapa Inca of the independent Vilcabamba state. His ascension to the throne occurred around 1571 CE, following the death of his half-brother, Titu Cusi Yupanqui. Titu Cusi had maintained a complex relationship with the Spanish, engaging in both intermittent warfare and diplomatic negotiations, even allowing missionaries into Vilcabamba. However, his sudden death, which the Spanish were accused of causing, led to a hardening of the Inca stance and the rejection of further Spanish overtures. Tupac Amaru I, in contrast to his immediate predecessor, adopted a policy of uncompromising resistance against the Spanish colonial regime. He immediately expelled the Spanish missionaries and envoys from Vilcabamba, signaling a clear break from any pretense of peaceful coexistence or negotiation. His reign was characterized by a renewed commitment to the restoration of Inca sovereignty and the preservation of traditional Inca religious and cultural practices, free from Spanish influence. He sought to rally the remaining loyal Inca nobility and indigenous populations who continued to resist Spanish domination, appealing to a sense of shared Inca identity and a desire to expel the invaders. The Spanish colonial authorities in Lima, particularly Viceroy Francisco de Toledo, viewed the continued existence of the Neo-Inca state in Vilcabamba as an unacceptable challenge to Spanish authority and a potential rallying point for future rebellions. Toledo, who arrived in Peru in 1569, was determined to fully consolidate Spanish control and eliminate any vestiges of Inca sovereignty. He considered Tupac Amaru IX's unyielding stance a direct threat to the stability of the viceroyalty. In 1572 CE, Viceroy Toledo launched a decisive military campaign against Vilcabamba. A substantial Spanish force, composed of Spanish soldiers and a large contingent of indigenous allies, was dispatched under the command of Captain Martin Hurtado de Arbeto. The campaign was meticulously planned, utilizing multiple columns to converge on the remote Inca stronghold. The terrain, characterized by dense jungle, rugged mountains, and challenging river systems, posed significant logistical difficulties for the Spanish, making the advance slow and arduous. Despite the challenging environment, the Spanish forces eventually penetrated the Vilcabamba region. Tupac Amaru I's forces, though skilled in guerrilla warfare and utilizing the difficult terrain to their advantage, were ultimately outnumbered and outmatched by Spanish weaponry and sustained military pressure. The Inca engaged the Spanish in a series of skirmishes and defensive actions, but they were unable to prevent the systematic advance of the well-equipped colonial army. Tupac Amaru I, along with his family and key advisors, attempted to escape further into the Amazonian lowlands to evade capture. However, a Spanish pursuit party, led by Captain Martin Garcia Oñez de Loyola, relentlessly tracked the fleeing Inca. They eventually captured Tupac Amaru I and his retinue near the border of the jungle. Tupac Amaru, I was brought back to Cusco, where he was subjected to a summary trial by the Spanish authorities. He was accused of rebellion, idolatry, and other fabricated charges. Despite pleas for clemency from some Spanish officials and religious figures, Viceroy Toledo remained resolute in his decision to execute the last Inca emperor. Tupac Amaru I was publicly beheaded in the main plaza of Cusco on September 24, 1572 CE. His execution marked the definitive end of the neo-Inca state of Vilcabamba and the last organized vestige of Inca sovereignty. This act symbolized the complete triumph of Spanish colonial rule over the Inca Empire. The final demise of the neo-Inca state of Vilcabamba and the full consolidation of Spanish colonial rule over the former Inca Empire occurred in 1572 CE, culminating in the capture and execution of Tupac Amaru I. This event marked the definitive end of organized Inca resistance and solidified the new colonial order in Peru. Viceroy Francisco de Toledo, who arrived in Peru in 1569, regarded the independent Inca enclave in Vilcabamba as an intolerable challenge to Spanish authority. He believed its continued existence fostered indigenous rebellions and undermined the legitimacy of the Spanish crown in the Andes. Toledo was determined to implement comprehensive reforms to establish firm Spanish control, and eliminating Vilcabamba was a prerequisite for this agenda. Diplomatic efforts to negotiate with Tupac Amaru I, who had recently ascended to the Sapa Inca throne in Vilcabamba, proved fruitless, as the young emperor adopted a policy of uncompromising resistance. In April 1572 CE, Viceroy Toledo launched a large-scale military campaign against Vilcabamba. A substantial Spanish force, comprising approximately 250 Spanish soldiers and a much larger contingent of several thousand indigenous allies, was assembled. The expedition was placed under the command of Captain Martín Hurtado de Arrieta, with several experienced captains, including Martín García Óñez de Loyola, leading detachments. The campaign was meticulously planned, involving multiple columns advancing from different directions to converge on the remote Inca stronghold. The terrain of Vilcabamba, characterized by dense Amazonian jungle, rugged mountains, and numerous rivers, presented immense logistical and tactical challenges for the Spanish. The Inca forces, under Tupac Amaru I, utilized the difficult environment to their advantage, employing guerrilla tactics, setting ambushes, and destroying bridges and roads to impede the Spanish advance. Despite these obstacles and the fierce resistance, the superior Spanish weaponry, discipline, and sustained military pressure allowed them to gradually penetrate the region. The Spanish forces eventually captured Vilcabamba la Vieja, the Inca capital, but found it largely abandoned, as Tupac Amaru I and his inner circle had already retreated further into the jungle. A relentless pursuit followed, led by Captain Loyola. The Spanish tracked the fleeing Inca through extremely difficult terrain, demonstrating their determination to capture the last Sapa Inca. Tupac Amaru I, his family, and key advisors were ultimately apprehended near the border of the Amazonian lowlands. Tupac Amaru I was brought back to Cusco, the former Inca capital, where Viceroy Toledo orchestrated a summary trial. The charges against him included rebellion against the Spanish crown, idolatry, and the murder of Spanish envoys. Despite appeals for clemency from some Spanish officials and religious figures who recognized the injustice of the proceedings, Viceroy Toledo remained resolute. He believed that the public execution of the last Inca emperor was necessary to break the spirit of indigenous resistance and to assert the absolute authority of the Spanish crown. On September 24, 1572 CE, Tupac Amaru I was publicly beheaded in the main plaza of Cusco before a large gathering of Spanish and indigenous spectators. His execution was a deliberate act of state terror, intended to serve as a stark warning against any future uprisings. The death of Tupac Amaru I marked the definitive end of the neo-Inca state of Vilcabamba and the last organized vestige of Inca sovereignty. While localized resistance would continue, the systematic elimination of the Inca royal line and the destruction of their last independent stronghold allowed the Spanish to fully consolidate their colonial rule over the vast territories of the former Inca Empire, ushering in a new era of Spanish domination in Peru. Though the Inca Empire, Tawantinsuyu, fell to Spanish conquest in 1572 CE, its legacy has endured, profoundly shaping modern Peru and the broader Andean region. The influence of Inca civilization is evident in various aspects of contemporary life, from agricultural practices and social organization to cultural heritage and language. One of the most significant and visible enduring influences of the Inca is in agricultural techniques. The sophisticated terracing systems, known as Andean, continue to be utilized in many parts of the Andes. These ancient structures, meticulously engineered to prevent soil erosion and maximize arable land on steep slopes, remain productive farmlands today. Similarly, Inca irrigation canals, some still in use, demonstrate the lasting efficacy of their hydraulic engineering. The diverse array of native crops, domesticated and cultivated by the Inca, particularly potatoes, quinoa, and maize, remain staple foods in the Andean diet and have gained global recognition for their nutritional value. The traditional methods of food preservation, such as freeze-drying potatoes into chuño, are still practiced in highland communities, ensuring food security in harsh environments. Inca social structures, particularly the Ilu system, have also shown remarkable resilience. While transformed under colonial and modern influences, the fundamental concept of communal land ownership and reciprocal labor, Aini and Minca, within kinship-based communities, persists in many indigenous Andean villages. This collective approach to labor and resource management reflects a deep-seated organizational principle that predates and survived the Inca Empire itself, continuing to provide a social safety net and a framework for community cooperation. The cultural heritage of the Inca continues to inspire and inform modern Andean identity. Inca architectural prowess is still visible in the foundations of colonial buildings in Cusco, where Spanish structures were often built directly upon Inca stone walls, showcasing the enduring strength and precision of Inca masonry. Traditional Inca artistic motifs, geometric patterns, and weaving techniques are still present in contemporary Andean textiles and crafts, serving as a vibrant link to the pre-Columbian past. Festivals, though often syncretized with Catholic traditions, retain elements of ancient Inca ceremonies, such as the Inti Raymi celebration in Cusco, which draws thousands annually, reaffirming a connection to the sun god and Inca heritage. The Quechua language, which the Inca promoted as the administrative language of their empire, remains the most widely spoken indigenous language in the Americas, with millions of speakers across Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and parts of neighboring countries. Its persistence is a testament to the Incas' linguistic influence and the resilience of Andean cultures. While the Spanish imposed their language, Quechua continued to be spoken in daily life, preserving a vast body of oral traditions, myths, and knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. Furthermore, the Inca Empire continues to serve as a powerful symbol of indigenous strength, ingenuity, and resistance. The figures of the Supper Incas, particularly Pachacuti and Tupac Amaru I, are revered as national heroes and symbols of indigenous pride and sovereignty. Their story provides a narrative of a highly advanced indigenous civilization that achieved remarkable feats of organization, engineering, and cultural development, offering a source of inspiration for contemporary movements, advocating for indigenous rights and cultural revitalization in the Andean region and beyond. The legacy of the Inca is thus not merely a historical footnote, but a living, evolving influence that continues to shape the cultural, social, and economic landscape of the Andes.